All right, guys, welcome to Nitrox, Advanced Nitrox Deco Procedures with Helitrox Additive. We were just kind of going over a few things. The idea with this class is that it's the most important first step into technical diving. In this first section, we're going to talk about the basics and make sure that we set our expectation correctly on all the basic terms and terminology about pressure. We're going to go through the laws. We're going to talk about best mix and mod calculations. So it should be pretty basic stuff as we go through that. Starting off with this, my name is Benjamin. I'm a technical instructor trainer. And my favorite thing to do is technical diving. I like going deep, spending long amounts of time at deep depths. The things that I like to do and why I like to do this kind of diving, I like deep wrecks. And there are some world-class wrecks off the coast of Stuart here. In fact, it was canceled for tomorrow, but we moved it to next Wednesday. I will be emplacing the last sailor that served on the USS Mullifen. His remains on the USS Mullifen next Wednesday. So, and that wreck is at 200 feet. So it's kind of cool. You can do some pretty neat stuff. And the Mullifen's a really cool wreck, in my opinion. It is a 458-foot World War II. And I apologize. I retired from the Marine Corps, not from the Navy. So I always call it a battle cruiser, but it's not a battle cruiser. But it was a warship of some kind for the Navy. There's still guns on it. There you can penetrate it as well. Fun wreck. Like I said, it's at 200 feet. Neat wreck. And it's one of those wrecks that a lot of people will never get to ever see. So I like that aspect of it as well. So that's why I like doing it. We've got some people in the class as well. Randy, why are you taking tech?
Well, you're going to have to specify. Too many of us.
Yeah, right.
Randy, why are you taking tech?
LeBoy? Oh, okay. I also am interested in deeper wrecks. I've been diving since '97, not continuously. Got a stint where I stopped just because life, younger, no money, family. But older now, money, my kids are grown, so getting back into it.
There you go. Cool. Right on. How about you, Peyton? Why are you taking tech?
Just to learn more, just to get better at the skill set and understand more of the math and all that stuff behind it.
Physics and physiology are a lot of fun, and they're not as daunting as most people think. How about you, Tim?
Yeah, it's the same reason as Peyton, just to expand my knowledge of dive physics as well.
Gotcha. Randy Beckman.
Yeah, I really enjoy the wrecks, and I'm looking for some deeper dives and longer time frames. I enjoy trying to figure out how everything works together to make those things happen also.
Awesome. Randy, how about you?
Deeper, longer, as long as I can stay warm.
Fair enough. And Victoria, what interests you about tech?
I think a combination of the things. I'm in love with history, and so an opportunity to get, especially World War I and II history, so an opportunity to see some of those vessels myself that are in those deeper places, but also you can't get good at something unless you know all the aspects of something, and for me, this is the next set of aspects that I need to learn.
Awesome. Peyton, did I hit you?
You did. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I just want to make sure. I am blonde, and I'm older and retired, so it means I don't. All right, guys. So start off with, we need to kind of understand some of the ideas of the units of measurement as we kind of work through this process. And so to understand the units of measurement, we need to kind of go through the basic ideas of that there's more than one type of measurement, right, that we use in diving. And the first one is atmospheric pressure. So, Mr. Beckman, if I were to define atmospheric pressure in relation to diving, how would I define that?
The pressure related to depth for every 33 feet adds 1 atmospheric pressure to your calculations.
Gotcha. Absolutely. And that's one way we will look at it. The other thing we need to take in consideration as well, and we get confused in this term, but when we start talking about atmospheric pressure, we talk about the pressure of everything above the water. Would be our atmospheric pressure. So all pressure above the water would be considered our atmospheric pressure or our ambient pressure, right? The next pressure we deal with is to delineate out, so we get a difference between atmospheric pressure and below the water is the hydrostatic pressure. And so when we start dealing with the hydrostatic pressure, that's the weight exerted by the fluid of the water due to gravity. So we have a differentiation: the atmospheric pressure above the water, hydrostatic pressure below the water. So there'd be a third type of pressure we need to deal with in this that encompasses both of these. What would we call that? If we had atmospheric and hydrostatic pressure and they had a child, what would that child be?
I got atmosphere is absolute.
Absolutely. So it's pretty easy if you think about it, right? Atmosphere, air pressure, hydrostatic, water pressure, absolute everything, right? They're pretty simple dynamics. So as we start getting into this, it gets confusing because we do use the term ATA, which is atmospheric pressure as well. But we have two different types of pressures we deal with when we get into hydrostatic pressure. It's important to delineate those two out. The first one is obviously feet seawater, right? And 1 ATA in feet seawater is 33 feet. And oddly enough, barometric pressure doesn't always add up to exactly 33 feet, but it's close enough for government work. So Peyton works for the State Department, so government work is probably something he understands a tremendous amount, right? So close enough. So we're going to use for lack of exacting, but close enough. In feet seawater is 33 feet. But there's a difference. There are some really great technical dives in fresh water. One of my favorite technical dives is Yellowstone Park. It's if you were to go a mile off of the northeast corner out into the lake, and the lake's big, it's 136 square miles, right? And you drop down to 120 feet. You're dealing with altitude adjustment as well, but you're in a fresh water and you can do some long dives. But if you're a mile offshore, it's going to take you a little bit to get back. So we start dealing with fresh water as well. We have to realize that fresh water is 34 feet depth for each atmospheric pressure differentiation. So we start realizing that water exerts 14.7 psi, 14.7 psi per square foot, but it exerts that at 34 feet in freshwater, 33 feet in saltwater. Randy L., why do you think there's a difference between the pressure differentiations in saltwater versus freshwater?
Probably because the added salinity of salt water.
Absolutely. We add more stuff to it, it's going to weigh more. I like simple terms. And so that's the simplest way to put it is exactly. It's the salinity of the water gets in there. So as we start getting into this, we need to make sure that we're taking into account the term absolute pressure that's covering all of this. Now, it's important to understand this because as we start doing things like mod calculations and best blends, we need to take that into account because we need to understand that there's an atmospheric pressure that'll either need to be subtracted or added to everything we do. Does it make sense? We'll get into that a little bit more in just a moment. So as we start getting into this idea, we start getting into a tremendous amount of laws. And I've done a lot of different things in my life, and I have never had to deal with so many different names of laws in all my life. I mean, as we start getting into technical diving, we start dealing with Gay-Lussac's law and Amaton's law and Boyle's law and Marriott's law. And anybody know the difference between Boyle's law and Marriott's law? So it's just a fun little trivia off the side. It's the same law. They were both crazy scientists. Boyle was a crazy Scot that was throwing snakes in the ocean. Marriott was experimenting on plants. The only difference really between the two laws is Boyle came up with the idea that as pressure increases, volume decreases. As pressure decreases, volume increases. Marriott came along and he added at a constant temperature. That's the only difference between the two laws. And Marriott somehow figured that out on plants as we go along. So you'll sometimes hear Boyle's law referred to as Marriott's law. It's the same law. If you're in Europe, you'll hear Marriott's law probably more than you'll hear Boyle's law because obviously they want to go with the French guy and not the Scottish. So as you go through that process, so Boyle's law is pretty important. As I always like to believe that in physics can either save your life or kill you. You got two choices. It depends on which side of the coin you want to be on. So as we start looking at Boyle's law is it's a pressure volume relationship. And so as I start thinking about how that pressure and volume relationship work, Randy Beckman, how would that might be important to me as a technical diver?
Can you repeat that again?
How do you think Boyle's law would affect me as a technical diver? Why would that be important for me to understand?
Well, it deals with volumes and pressures. So I got to turn you up here real quick. Okay. deals with volumes and pressures, which pertains to, you know, your depth and the pressures and, you know, how much you breathe due to the pressures as you go down, whatnot. Volumes of gas.
Okay, so volumes of gas, why would that be important to me?
Obviously, the deeper you go, the higher the pressure of the depth, the more gas you consume.
Absolutely. It's not so much the more gas you consume, it's the volume that changes, right? So as we go down, so if we go down to 33 feet, nice easy number, that's a 50% change. So if we have an 80 cubic foot tank that we're working with, pressure changes, and as it comes out, the gas is compressed, and so there's twice as much gas in the same amount of volume. So that means that we get the equivalent, and this is not exactly correct to say it this way, but it makes it easier, is instead of having the access to 80 cubic feet at 33 feet, now we have access to 40 cubic feet of gas. Make sense? So that comes pretty important, especially as we start getting into gas calculations and understanding how that works. So if we're starting to plan out a dive, we say, okay, I'm gonna be a bright star, and I'm gonna dive two 100 HP tanks. That's 200 cubic feet of gas. I know me, I go through not a lot of gas. At 20 feet, 100 foot tanks will last me until tomorrow. I know at Heron Bridge, I could take an 80 cubic foot tank and I could dive for 2.5 hours and has a fair amount of gas remaining. So 100s would last quite a while. But now as we go down to that magic depth, we say we're going to 200 feet, right? All of a sudden, we're now at how many atmospheres? How many bar?
Do my math.
8.
Would it be 6?
8? No, 8.
7 ATA.
7 atmospheres.
Yes, absolutely. There you go. So 7 atmospheres. So that's taking that pressure down considerably. So it's 1/7 the size, right? So you take that 200 and you divide it by 1/7, and that's a considerably a smaller amount of gas. Make sense?
Mhm.
So as we start getting down, we're halving it each time. It goes from half to a third to a quarter. It keeps going to that point. And so we get a substantial less amount of gas to be able to use. So as my gas planning, I would imagine, I haven't had this experience yet, that having enough gas to complete the dive might be important. Fair enough?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So finishing the dive is always important. So our gas planning management has to take into account what depth we're actually getting to, how deep and how much gas we really do have. What's our absolute pressure on that gas that we're dealing with? Make sense?
Mhm.
So as we go through this process, there's where Boyle's law works against us. We've got to make sure that no matter what we're doing, we've got enough gas to be able to complete this dive throughout the process. Okay? So gas management is now here's where Boyle's law can kick in and help you, right? Like I said, every law can either help you or hurt you. You got a choice. I was doing a solo dive class, and I had a 30 cubic foot tank on my side that I was using, and a full-size tank on my back. And I decided that the tank was getting ready to go in for hydro. I wanted to go ahead and breathe it down. And I was curious. I was like, okay, I'm at 70 feet. What happens if I use this tank all the way to 0 to there's nothing left? If I start my ascent, how many breaths will I get from 70 feet to 15 feet where my safety stop was going to be? Anybody venture a guess?
You just said you have no gas left.
I had no gas at 70 feet. But as I rose in the water column to 15 feet, Boyle's law kicked in. How many breaths did I get on the way back up?
3 or 4.
3. That's a great guess. So it was 3 full breaths. That's why we say in diving that if you run out of gas at depth and you don't have anybody to share with, leave the regulator in your mouth and start heading up. You'll get more gas. Boyle's law kicks in. So as the pressure decreases, volume increases. Make sense?
Mhm.
So Boyle's law can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. So as we go through this process, Boyle's law calculation allows a diver to calculate this pressure they will experience at any depth and the amount of gas that will be consumed at that depth and how much volume will increase if they ascend from one depth to another. Make sense? So just remember, pressure volume relationships tie directly to how pressure acts on a diver throughout the progress of their dive. Easy enough? So as I always break it down to, as pressure increases, that means depth, volume decreases. As pressure decreases, that means we're ascending, volume increases. That's all Boyle's law is really trying to tell you. It's extremely important, especially as we come into gas planning, and that's how, while as a recreational diver, 60 feet, 70 feet, whatever. I could always get to the surface pretty easily. But as a technical diver, I'm at 175 feet or 150 feet, whatever it is. I build up 30 minutes of deco. The ability for me to just head to the surface, poof, is gone, right? It's at that point, I'll be at that point that I guarantee that bad things are going to happen that I don't want to be a part of. Now, knock on wood, I have always worked very carefully and very diligently to stay within the rules of diving and the rules of planning. And I've never had an out of gas emergency for myself. I've dealt with other out of gas for other divers, but not myself. And I've never had the bends and had to bend in a chamber, knock on wood, right? Always played the same. So as we go through this process, I want you to realize that everything's taken from a safety point of view. I want you guys to always think, okay, here's where we're at. What can I do to add a little bit of safety margin to that? A little bit of margin goes a long way, especially in diving. And a lot of bit of margin goes even farther. And it helps you not to become a Dan statistic. And last thing I would want any of you to do is become a Dan statistic to go through this process. So as we continue this process, the other law we deal with a lot is Dalton's law. So Dalton's law is easily remembered. It is the law of the equal sign. That's all it is. It basically, all Dalton's trying to tell you is that everything on the left side of the equal sign has to equal everything on the right side of the equal sign. So simple enough, Dalton tells you if on the left side we have 1 plus 2, what has to be on the right side?
3.
Ding, ding, ding. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So that's all we're trying to do is it gives you the law of basic algebra. This is stuff we learned in 6th grade algebra of how to figure out what the partial pressure of what I'm dealing with is so I can figure out my best blend of gas for the depth I want to dive. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Try to get this back over here. So we can express Dalton very simply with a chart. I like this little chart. It's nice and simple. So simple enough, we realize that at depth of 0, we're at 1 bar. That's the surface. Partial pressure of air is 21%, 79%. The volume is 1. The density of it is still 1 times, right? And we're going to get a lot more into density probably later tonight or maybe tomorrow. It might depends on how far we get along today. But as we start going in 33 feet or 10 meters, we realize now we're at 2 bar. Our partial pressure of oxygen is now 42. Here's how that works. Dalton says that at 1 bar, 0.21, 0.79 equal 1. Well, now we're at 2 bar. 0.42 and 1.58 equal 2. That's all Dalton's trying to tell you. There's a big equal sign that you can't see that's right here. That's all Dalton's trying to tell you. It's simple enough. We go a little deeper. 3 bar, well, that's 0.63, 0.237. And while it's not correct to think of it like this, I like to think of it in a simpler method. And my visualization that I use is I call this the percentage of oxygen. So now we're at 21% oxygen, 42% oxygen, 63% oxygen. And while that's not exactly correct to say it that way, it makes an easier visualization. Does that make sense, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you guys might have noticed that I put a handy-dandy little bar right here where things start getting negative. And the reason being is at 2.37 and above, that's the point where nitrogen starts to become narcotic, whether we like it or not. And so really, if I were to put a fine point on what am I really teaching you guys? My goal is to teach you guys 2 things. One, how to hang in the water column correctly, because that's, in my opinion, the most important part of technical diving. Computers will do a lot for you, that's for sure. But the other part is I'm teaching you really how to manage your nitrogen. That's the biggest thing. Is if I can teach you guys how to manage nitrogen, the rest is actually pretty simple, right? And one of the ways we manage that nitrogen is to be able to learn to do those appropriate stops, hang there, allow nitrogen to diffuse out of our tissue compartments into our bloodstream, out of our bloodstream into our venous system, through the alveolar, and we exhale it, right? That's what I'm really teaching you, is how to manage nitrogen in your system. Now, I'm going to throw a few other things in there as well, and we'll talk a little bit about volume, and we have already, but we'll also talk about the density of the gas and how that affects you as well. But the first portion I want you to realize is 2.37 and above, nitrogen starts becoming a problem. That's going to be our first challenge to be aware of. So as you kind of put that down, I would put that in my notes and kind of be aware that that is one of our precluding factors that we look to stay below. It's one of the reasons we love helium, and we'll get into that a lot in a little bit. Make sense? We good?
Yes.
All righty. So if I were to go through and kind of give a simple explanation of all the laws, I might think of it like this. Boyle-Marriott is pressure and volume. And the easiest way to think about the pressure and volume in Boyle-Marriott is to think of a balloon going to depth and the pressure outside of it pushing in. As it goes down, we've all played that game where the pressure in the balloon got smaller, right? We've at least seen that on a video somewhere, right? Everybody seen that?
Yes.
Cool. All right. Charles' law, we talk a little bit about, and it's not important that you remember all the laws, but at least you understand the principles behind them. Charles' law, I want you to think about pressure and temperature. So I like to think of Charles' law, think of it like a boiling pot, the pressure in the pot against the lid itself, trying to push out, right? Gay-Lussac, just fun to say, is volume related to temperature. The way I like to think about that is like a hot air balloon. This is the expansion of the air or the volume inside as it expands. Henry's law, we're going to dig into a little bit more in a little while. Henry's law is the gas dissolved in a liquid law. I like to call it the Kool-Aid law, and we're going to dig into that in just a bit. But it's the faster we stir the Kool-Aid, the more it mixes, right? It's how gas dissolves in a liquid, the liquid being our blood. So we will get into that and we'll in just a moment. And then the final law we talk about is Dalton. And Dalton is where it gives us the partial pressures of all the mixes like air and how gases push around the things and hold their own strength in mix, right? So where we use Dalton is example in best blends and maximum operating depths. So where do we use these laws? Boyle-Marriott. The easiest place to think about where we use Boyle-Marriott is to determine the amount of usable gas in a tank during a dive. Easy enough. Charles' law. This understands when to stop and let a tank cool and when you're at the filling station. So I use Charles' law all the time. Tanks get hot when they get filled. They get really hot. I actually have calluses from, I guess you can't see them, but I've got calluses from grabbing hot tanks. It's pretty funny. People think I have weights. I don't. But Gay-Lussac, that's the effect of temperature around us when we get ready to dive. So think of a tank sitting in a hot car or a tank in cold water. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. They drove up to cave country. You leave those nice dark tanks, metal tanks in the sun, in the middle of Florida sun. They get all nice and hot. Then you jump in that nice 72-degree water, and you're like, oh my God, this is so cold, right? And you start watching the pressure gauge. The funniest time I think I ever saw this was we had tanks in the back of my truck. We were in Idaho going to a hot springs. Hot spring was 92 degrees outside, and I'd left my tanks overnight in the back of my truck. And the air temperature was about 5 degrees. So I grabbed my tanks, threw them on, jumped in the warm water to get warmed up because it was, 5 degrees. It was freaking cold, dude. And I actually had a negative sac rate for about 4 or 5 minutes. I saw it on because as my tanks got warm and expanded, I was breathing slower than the expansion. So for all my Perdix, it actually showed a negative sac rate. I'd never seen that before. It was pretty cool. So again, a great example of Gay-Lussac. Henry's law is the law of perfusion and diffusion of nitrogen in our body during a dive. Simple enough. And then Dalton is just used for best blend. I like to focus in on Henry just for a little bit. I lovingly call it the Kool-Aid law. If you guys would like, I wrote all these down, and if you are into screenshots, I can kick it on the screen. You can take a screenshot of this, or I can send it to you as a note. Doesn't matter to me, whichever you guys like. But while I tell you about the Kool-Aid law, I'll share my window, and you can cheat sheet and use take a screenshot. Oh. Let me admit our wayward guest. There we go. There you go, Peyton. Peyton, are you joining us from Germany? There we are. Peyton, are you joining us for Germany, or are you in the States? You're muted. All right. Peyton, you're still muted, but that's okay. Here's how I like to explain Henry's Law. Henry's Law, if I went in my mom's kitchen and there was a big clear crystal pitcher of water on the counter right there, and I took a packet of Kool-Aid and I dumped it in, Randy LeBoy, what would happen to the Kool-Aid crystals? Would they mix?
It'd start to go down to the bottom.
It really wouldn't mix, would they?
No.
What if I took a big wooden spoon and I stuck it in there and I stirred the snot out of it? Would it mix?
Yes.
That's Henry's Law. So Henry's Law says the amount of gas that in a solution is dissolved directly in proportion to the amount of agitation and temperature. There's two important portions of this, and these are very important for technical diving, in my opinion. So the first part of it is the amount of agitation. As my heart beats, gas dissolves in the liquid. As I breathe it in, dissolves into the bloodstream more quickly. In essence, it also dissolves and absorbs into the tissue compartments more readily. So if I'm working hard during a dive, I'm going to absorb nitrogen more quickly. Make sense? Easy enough. So, Victoria, why would that be important to know that if I work hard, I absorb more nitrogen?
It'll help you determine like what your working load of the dive is, how much effort you're putting in. Are you fighting current? Are you doing some sort of labor that's going to change what your absorption rate is?
Absolutely. So if I have a really big technical dive where I've got a lot of effort, I somehow have a brain aneurysm and I decide I want to go help CETO bring a boat up 170 feet, and I'm placing lift bags. I'm working hard, getting those chains in the right place. I might want to take a little extra time on my deco and my ascent, right? Absolutely. Add a little safety margin there. The biggest problem we deal with, I'll take that off so I'm sure everybody's got that, is we all are wearing these wonderful, this is one of my computers. It's a not Shearwater, a Garmin Mark III, right? It's wonderful. It does all kinds of cool stuff. It's got heart rate monitor. It's got respiration. It's got, it tells me when my wife's mad at me. All kinds of cool stuff. I get that through text message actually, but anyway, it's got all kinds of cool stuff on it. But does any of that cool stuff change the algorithm for diving?
No, you're the conservator or yeah, no.
No? Okay, I got one no. Tim, what do you think? Is it that heart rate, that respiration, sleep? Does any of that kick in and change the algorithm for my dive?
Change the computer algorithm or change the way that your body's going to react physiologically?
We'll just stick with the algorithm for now.
No.
Okay, so the answer is no, absolutely. It doesn't take any of that into account. So the biggest problem we have is the dive computer, in my opinion. It was the algorithm they were using was developed by Mr. Albert Buhlmann in 1997. That was the 16C final iteration. He was working for Shell, or I'm sorry, not Shell, Exxon. He was sponsored by Exxon. And he based all his calculations on a 19-year-old Navy kid who gets 8 hours of sleep, eats 3 squares, and runs 5 miles every morning. Now, Tim, you look like you're in good shape. I am not. I'm 56 years old, and the 5 mile runs are in my past somewhere. I used to run a lot. I don't run anymore. So how my body absorbs and works with nitrogen is very different than a 19-year-old Navy kid. It's different than all of you, and all of you are different than each other. But the problem is we're all using this generic algorithm. So it's up to us to have a deeper understanding that if I have a hard dive, I'm working hard, I'm making doing a lot of work underwater, that it be to my advantage to have a little bit easier dive, a time with, or not an easier time, but to take a little bit more time in my deco, to do a little slower ascent, to allow my body a little bit more freedom to off gas that nitrogen that I've absorbed. Now, there's a second part of this that's important to understand as well, and we're going to get back to effort. The other part is at temperature. So the temperature works counterintuitively, but if you think about it, it works. It's right along. So the colder the gas that we breathe, the denser the gas is, right? And the more it's able to absorb into the liquid more easily and get into smaller places is the easy way to think about it. So if colder gas absorbs more readily. So I have yet to be on a 200-foot dive where it got warmer. I have been on a 120-foot dive when it got warmer. We were diving some active craters in Yellowstone Lake, and it actually warmed. It was 39 at the surface. It was 62 at the depth at 120 feet. It was amazing. And then we had to come back up through the negative thermal climate. It was weird. But one place in the whole world I've been to that got like that. Usually my deeper dives, and the deeper I go, the colder it gets, right? So we need to make sure that we're dealing with A, thermal protection, but B, we have to realize the gas is going to come out 25 degrees cooler than the ambient temperature that we're dealing with. So that means that as we get deeper, the calculation that the computer cannot take into account is the density of the gas because of its temperature. So it means it's going to absorb more readily into our system than what we might think. And so as we get into those deeper depths, and there have been plenty of times I've dove the Molefin at 200 feet, and it's been wonderful. It's been 74 degrees, 75 degrees. That's wonderful. But there's been plenty of times I've done those deeper dives on some of the other wrecks out here, and it's 58 degrees on that wreck. And so I have to realize that I'm getting that colder water, that I'm going through a couple things. One of them is I'm fighting Henry's law. Gas is absorbing more readily into my tissue compartments. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other part of the effort portion of this as well, this is Henry's law is one of the reasons that we're able to do something called accelerated decompression. And what accelerated decompression means is that we're moving past that magical, we were all taught in Nitrox class, don't go past 1.4, you will die, you shall not pass, right? But that's no longer the case. We are now technical divers, and we now understand that when we do pass that magic limit, our dive is done. Over with, finite. Pick the language, we'll say in that. Your dive is done. At that point, we're ascending and we're hanging, we're relaxing. We want to get to that point, that semi-zen point of heaven where we're just about ready to fall asleep and we're relaxed. We're not doing this, we're not kicking, we're not finning, we're just relaxing. Doesn't matter if we're in the water column or not, but we're balanced and we're hanging. And at that point, we're able to off-gas more readily, and we're able to use Henry law to our advantage. We've stopped that heavy absorption of gas, and we're allowing gas to come out more readily, more easily. Make sense? And because of that, we're not able to tax the body, and it doesn't become quite as much of a problem at 1.6. So we generally deco at 1.6 as a general term, at least in open circuit. When we get to closed circuit, we get a new argument as we go through this process. Perfect. All right, guys. Let's start with Mr. Payton. You get to be the first one. Tell me a little bit about what you just learned overall.
You mean today or just in general with diving stuff?
This evening in the class, things I've chatted about.
I think that it's interesting pointing out the I forget how you say it or how you said it, but about the math of, like, when you gave the example of 200 feet, when you're dealing with 7 atmospheres absolute, that you would have roughly a seventh of the gas down there. I think that's an easy way to think of it, just with the reduction of the actual physical volume of the gas. I think that was an interesting point for me.
Cool. Randy Beckman, give me something you learned, picked up in the last half hour.
Yeah, well, with the same thing, Boyle's law, pertaining to the pressure and the volume. You know, as you go deeper, you have less volume. As you ascend, you gain volume. And then, you know, and the nitrogen narcosis at 2.37. Just a quick, the other day when I dove, we were doing it was only 95 feet, but current was really strong and nearly never had any problems with narcosis. But I was working pretty hard swimming against the current, trying to get into a few places, and I noticed it right then as I was, you know, struggling to get to where I wanted to go. I could feel the narcosis increasing. But yeah, and just how all the laws kind of work together to in conjunction with the online course, you know, to make our gas planning and whatnot to make it capable to dive deeper.
So fun point. Later in this class, we're going to talk about gas density, and I'm going to dispel your myth that you had issues with narcosis, and it's going to be something different. Exciting. I love it. Randy, oh my Randy.
Yes.
What did you learn?
This one? I never realized.
I'm L. I guess you're just Randy.
Okay. I never realized temperature had that much that much to do with absorption. That's incredible. They didn't really address that much in the online course, like Randy Beckman was saying. And it's incredible because the density has to change with temperature.
Absolutely.
So that was huge. That was a huge learning point.
I might add just a little caveat in here, guys. One of the things I promise in every class is you have to read the book, because 50% of what's in the book I will not teach. Y'all are big kids, put big kid pants on this morning, and you can read it just as easily as I can read it to you. And half of what I will teach will not be in the book. You came to me for a reason, because I've done this at least once, and I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night. So so that you came to me for the experience of somebody who have at least done this once and survived. So I'm here, so I must have survived it at least once.
Anyway, temperature is a huge point. I never considered that.
Absolutely. So hopefully you guys will get stuff that you didn't pick up in the book. Vic, what did you pick up?
For me, it was relating the laws to the specific things that we experience about the laws, like tanks heating up in the car, tanks cooling down in the water, like just having that visual, like I see that every time I go diving, but I never put the law's name on it. So that was super helpful.
Cool. Mr. Tim.
Yeah. I had never heard of a negative or inverted thermocline before when you were diving up in Yellowstone. So I'm going to look into that.
One other place that I have heard, I don't know where there's a secret cave in Florida. I do not know where it's at, but I'm close to figuring it out. When people tell me that there's a secret dive site, my little detective ears go, woohoo, I got to figure it out. But there is a pelagic cave in Florida that gets to about 490 feet. At the 300-foot mark, they have started discovering some of the beginnings of the world, as it was put. And because it's a hot spring, that it gets warmer and warmer. So one of the things they did to do these technical dives is they set up an atmosphere, literally an underwater diving bell that they could change into, so they could change into wetsuits at 99 feet. They had to dive dry suits to get down, and then they had to change into wetsuits because it was too warm. The water literally got to 100 degrees as they got down into these deeper things. And so they got together with several physicists and Dan to figure out the new profile for decompression, because there's no written profile for a negative thermal climb. It's pretty interesting. I know one of the divers personally very, very well that it originally dove this, and as the story goes, it's also now restricted. Nobody's allowed to dive it without express permission from the University of Florida. So they have to get some pretty significant passes. But it was really interesting to read through some of the dive notes of how they had to come up with a new dive table just for this cave. It was really neat.
So if it was that warm at depth, what was the surface temperature that they supposedly had to put dry suits on?
They were at the dry suit level. They said it was coming out at 65, and it was flushing through a 65, but it got warmer and warmer and warmer. The problem was that they still had deco. After they changed from dry suits to wetsuits, they got back in. They had to change back to dry suits to do the rest of their deco, because most of your deco is 70 feet, 80 feet in that area for a lot of your stuff. And so they would do basic decos because they were getting so deep at 150 to, and they do 140, 130, 120, 110, 100, and then they finally get in the diving bell, change over to wetsuits so they could do the rest of it, or dry suits so they could do the rest of it, so they wouldn't get too cold because they've been hot. It was really interesting reading through all the dynamics of it. It's a one in the world kind of place, and like I said, nobody gets to dive because it's heavily restricted because of the artifacts they were finding. So pretty interesting. But yes, reverse thermocline is a really weird thing. I've only, like I said, only experienced it in one place, and it was really interesting. It was wonderful though, because you get from 39 to 62 degrees, and 62 degrees in a dry suit is awesome. You can spend forever without getting cold. So, Randy L, I don't want you to feel neglected or forgotten here. What did you learn in the last half hour?
Yeah, so I've heard of setting conservatism on your algorithm before a dive that you plan on, but this is the first time I actually thought about making, like, just being self-aware and making some small changes based on the effort that you're doing or how cold you feel.
Absolutely. So guys, I like to think of diving as the most self-aware sport that you will ever be a part of. And I've done a lot of dumb sports, right? I did MotoGP. I've raced a quarter mile in Wild Street and Street Outlaw. Done a lot of dumb stuff. I've got 5,000 skydives, right? If it's dumb, wild, and reckless, I probably tried it and either enjoyed it or just said, it's okay, right? My son and I used to do a fair amount of climbing as well. So definitely had that thrill-seeking heart with me for a long time. But in diving, I realized that how I feel going in the water is how I should feel coming out of the water. And being self-aware during the dive is huge. And being cognizant of what's going on with your body, because there's a lot of different forces working against you and not always to your advantage. And so part of this, that's what some of this class is about, is how do you mitigate those risks in such a way so that they don't, you have the upper hand on it, right? It's like getting to choose your own cards at a poker game, right? If I could go to Vegas and I'll go ahead and take all 4 of those aces, they'll be my hand. That's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to put all the aces in your hand so you have the best ability to make the most cognitive choices. So as you're on your dive, you've got to take that personal accountability and say, okay, how do I feel? One of the things I do during every technical dive, and when you guys, if you ever guys go deep enough with me in advanced Nitrox deco procedures, 150 feet, I don't do it as much, but the deeper I go, I do it every single time. I do the drunk test, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. I do it both hands. How's my manual dexterity? Where am I at currently? I'm constantly doing math in my head. This is one of the times that it came into be a big problem for me. Nikki and I, the day after the ice had come off Yellowstone Lake, we'd gone out for our first dive of the season to do some research and photography and mapping some of the geothermal features. We got out and I had a extra small pinhole size. I mean, it was like that big hole in my glove. And I felt the water coming in, and I felt the icy pricks on my arm. And we dove for about 40 minutes. And finally, towards the end of the dive, I'd gotten so hypothermic that we were at 60 feet. I was trying to do the math in my head. How long will it take me to get to the surface on an NDL dive from 60 feet with a 3-minute safety stop? And we're sitting here at the surface, no big deal. I mean, okay, no problem. 3 minutes plus 2 minutes, we're good, right? 5 minutes. I couldn't do the math. I was so gone that I was like, oh shit. And when I realized I couldn't add 2 minutes, 3 minutes together and come up with 5, I watched my computer, was smart enough to do that. I did my gentle ascent, watched my safety stop, waited for it to clear, got to the surface, paddled back to shore. And my wife actually chewed my ass later, which is not uncommon. But when I took my dry suit, my whole left side was purple. I was extremely hypothermic. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because I'm an idiot. I didn't want to ruin her dive. It was our first dive of the season in Yellowstone. It was, and it was a pretty special dive. But you've got to take the time to be constantly aware of what your mental state is. Whether you like it or not, you are altered. Would any of you get in the car with somebody that had just drank a beer? Hopefully the answer is no. Because if you just drank a tall boy, are you altered?
Yes.
Absolutely. 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. Can you get a DUI from that? Most likely. So you just don't want to take your life into your own hands like that. So you have to realize that every time you go past 33 feet, you have a certain amount of altered state, whether you like it or not. I don't care if you have an IQ of 150, 200 at the surface. You get 33 feet down, that IQ starts going down. Your ability to process, your ability to comprehend, your ability to put together simple facts, your physical dexterity all decreases. One of the things when I did teach a lot of recreational classes, I used to love to teach deep diving. It's one of my favorites. And I take my students down to 115 to 120 feet for their deep dive. But before we went down, I pull out a slate. And on my slate, I had 8 questions. And they were all simple 1 digit plus 1 digit, like 2 plus 4, 3 plus 5, 6 plus 2, right? And every one of them ended in 9 or less. And I had 8 of them. And at the surface, I'd tell them in hand signals, guys, I want you to look at this. And in hand signals, I want you to tell me what the answer is. And I timed it. It typically take about 15 seconds for them to answer all 8 questions. Poof, easy enough. I take them down to 120 feet on air. I love doing this on air. And as we got down, I'd pull out the same slate, same exact questions. I tell them I was going to switch it. They never switched it. I always like to use the exact same. So there was zero excuse, right? I never saw that. That was the first time. Nope, you've already seen it once. You already knew the answers. It usually took them about a minute and a half, 2 minutes to do the exact same test at 120 feet. And they swear. It's funny. I even took, I would clip a GoPro on once in a while as a, just as proof so that I didn't have to fiddle with it. And a video on my GoPro as they were trying to answer. They're like, no way. I'm like, hey, let's go to the game film, man. It's all good. And they'd be like, holy crap, did you slow this down? Oh, sorry, no, I did not. So it's interesting to realize how much cognitive ability and time loss you get when this happens. And the same thing happens when you start noticing dive maladies as well. Like I was doing a 150-foot dive in a reservoir in Idaho, and I was teaching a tech class, and I had 2 dive guys with me that were well trained, and we'd been down for about 30 minutes when it hit me. I took a huge hypercapnic hit. It was the last time I ever dove that depth on air. I won't dive past 100 feet without for any length of time without a little bit of helium in my mix. Now maybe I'm bougie. I don't know. It is, but at 150 feet at this 30 minutes, all of a sudden, like that, the thought came in my head. I'm going to die. My wife's going to be a widow. I remember it like it was yesterday. Everybody's going to die. What are we going to do? Oh my God, we're all going to die. That was the instant thoughts. I'm extremely experienced. I've got a shit ton of dives, a shit ton of experience. First time I'd taken a serious hypercapnic, the earth narrowed. The vision got like this. It was like, I knew exactly where we're at. I had a great dive plan. I planned my dive and I was diving my plan. And I knew where the shore was. The shore was about 100 yards from my position due east of me. Got my compass, headed due east. We had to swim 100 yards. It probably took, I can't tell you how long it took. All I can tell you is that it probably took 3 to 4 minutes to swim that 100 yards. It felt like 25 minutes, easy. It was the longest 3.5 minutes of my entire life. And I've had my life flash before my eyes numerous times in stupid moments. And that was probably the longest 3 minutes of my life. It was crazy. Time distortion is a real and meaningful thing. And the crazy part about it is I followed my plan, followed everything else. We came up, and once we got to 90 feet, which was our first deco stop, like that, it was gone. Everything was clear. All the panic thoughts were gone. And, I went back to my training, focused on little things, did what I was supposed to be doing, and happened. But I can tell you, as you get into these situations, having the training and realizing that you're more altered than you realize is huge. And the only way you can keep an eye on that is to constantly check in on yourself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Basic math. Okay, I'm 100 feet down. How long does it take me to get service? Okay, 3 minutes, whatever, right? But do those kind of things. You can use mine. You can find your own. It doesn't matter. But find your own cognitive checks and check in with yourself on a regular basis, because it's little things like that will help keep you safe. And when you start noticing that altered state, that differentiation between what you should be able to do and what you are able to do, is the time to say, oh, I'm good. It's time for me to start making my gentle ascent and follow my plan to the surface. So if I could get one major safety issue through your guys' head, always check in yourself and realize that anybody can call a dive at any time for any reason without consequence. Period. End of statement. I have a hardcore 3-0 shit rule. I will not break that 3-0 shit rule. If I have 3-0 shits before a dive or during a dive day's done. I don't care if you flew from the North Pole and your name is Santa Claus. Our dive day is done. And I am not afraid to kick somebody out of the water for that. I had a diver who came out from Quebec to take a course with me in Idaho. And we had 3-0 shits with him getting off the dock. And when his third one off the dock at the first buoy happened, I told him, David, I need you to turn around and swim back to the dock. And I swam back with him. He's like, what's going on? I says, I need you to get out of the water and take your dry suit off. Okay. I says, your dive day is done. I will not dive with you. You're not safe. We've had 3-0 shits and they were significant enough to make me worry. We will try again tomorrow. So probably the best thing I could have ever done for him as well, because I'm quite confident one of us would have died. And I'm a better swimmer, so I don't think it would have been me. Just kidding. So there you go. So as we go through this process, check in with yourself. I think I droned on a little long on that. I apologize, but safety is pretty big deal for me when it comes to this stuff, because we're, as an open water diver, your knowledge is like this and your safety factors like this. Well, as a technical diver, your knowledge is like this and your safety factor is like this. So it behooves you to really check in with yourself and be very cognizant of that. So other things we can do, we'll just continue moving on. I've kind of beat that dead horse and buried it now, is to understand that we get the opportunity to make some basic choices. We step into this wonderful law called Dalton. Dalton is our basic algebra law. And we get to make some basic choices. And at the first portion of this class, we're going to talk all air and versions of air and nitrox, right? So if we wanted to decide, and we said, okay, I want to make a dive. And in this particular case, I've written out for you, if a diver wishes to make a dive to 115 feet, what's the best mixture for that dive? Well, if we're imperial idiots and we're not cool like Peyton, who probably uses the metric system on all his entire family, he lives in Germany. He probably does this.
European.
There you go. So we'll do this in imperial for the rest of us dumb bunny Americans. So 115 feet, easy. Divide that by 33 feet seawater gives us 3.48. Now, Randy Beckman, why am I adding a 1 there?
For the pressure at the surface.
Absolutely. And not just because it's written there, because when we do that, we get our hydrostatic pressure first. We need to get to our absolute pressure, which is the total pressure. So this is where those terms come in. So now we're at 4.48 actual bar, right? Well, we know that we want to keep a working load of 1.4. So simple enough, we divide 1.4 by 4.48 equals 31% nitrox. So if I'm going to go out and dive the deepest point of off the shores of the Princess Anne, which is a great dive, and there's some really cool stuff off the east side that gets about 110, 115 feet, I can call my local dive shop. I can use this basic math and I can say, okay, hey, I need 31% because my max depth potentially is going to be 115 feet as I hunt down and kill all those little bastard lionfish. I have a deep hatred of all lionfish, by the way, guys. You'll learn more. So as we go through this process, good news is there's tables out there galore, guys, and there's a ton of those. So we can check ourselves. We can go over the table. Every dive shop has these, and we can say, okay, 115 feet, percentage of nitrox, 31%. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. But here's how the math works. It's pretty straightforward. It's depth divided by your atmospheres. In this particular case, we're using salt water, so it'd be depth divided by your feet seawater. Add the surface back in, and you get your actual bar depth. Now, if we're slick, we realize we can just take out, move the decimal place over, and we're at 44.8 meters, right? So easy enough. I'm sorry, 34.8 meters. So easy enough. And then we add our atmospheric pressure back in. Sorry for the mistake right there. And then simply enough, we can either do this by 1.4 or 1.6. So if we're figuring out our deco mix, We use it 1.6. If we're figuring out based upon our bottom mix, then we use 1.4. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Has everybody done this before? You should have at least a few times in Nitrox, right? Everybody feel pretty familiar with this?
Yes.
Okay, easy enough. And then, of course, we deal with the magic of mod, right? Mod is the same Dalton equation. We're just, instead of solving for X, we're solving for Y. So we realize that 1.4 is the maximum partial pressure of working load. 1.6 is the maximum partial pressure at depth for a accelerated decompression. So, for example, if a diver wants to know how deep he can dive on a 40% nitrox, easy enough. We're just solving for Y at this point. 1.4 divided by 0.4 equals 3.5. Randy LeBoy, why are we taking out that one there in the next column?
Let's see. Take out the atmosphere again?
Correct. Yep, we want to get to our actual depth. And so we need to take out the atmosphere because what we're looking at is just hydrostatic depth. So easy enough. We take that out. 2.5 times 33 equals 82.5 feet. Let's go check ourselves. Go over to our handy dandy cool chart here. 83 feet, 40%. They rounded up. I disagree with that, but I guess they don't always see it my way. I would have rounded it to 82, but that's me. So that's how it works. And the nice thing is every chart you're going to deal with in a dive shop, we have one of these on our wall, is going to have both 1.6 and 1.4. Every dive planning software is going to have this accessible as well, very simply and easily for you. So you get to choose your this is, sorry about that. I almost ended the call. Sorry about that, guys. Stop sharing. So this is your choose your adventure, right? As we get into technical diving, we do work with standardization as a general rule of thumb. There's only one agency out there that dictates that you only can use very specific mixes. I am not that agency. So I believe firmly that you should have the choice of using the gas blend that works best for you. Now, the caveat to that is when we start getting into the idea of team diving. Notice I didn't say buddy diving, right? I always call it team diving. Peyton, why do you think I discuss it as team diving, not buddy diving?
I guess simply because buddy implies two or a pair, and the team you could have 3, 4, more than just a traditional 2 dive pair.
That's a great, absolutely. That's absolutely part of it. The other part of it is I like the connotation of Nikki is my dive buddy. She is 2 rooms over. If I ran out of gas or I fell over on the floor and had a heart attack right now, how helpful would she be to me?
Minimally. Okay.
Probably 0, right? I'd probably flop around for a while. She'd probably call the insurance agent, make sure she paid up the insurance first, and then eventually come in and maybe give me CPR if I'm lucky, right? Not after an hour of if I'm alive. So in team diving means that I'm on a team. I need to be able to be on the same court in the same vicinity and able to assist and work with the people that I'm diving with, right? So I like the connotation of using the idea of team versus buddy. Buddies, same motion, same dive. Team, I can get to you. I can help you if something happens. You need a knife, or you just want to give somebody a cool high five. Boom, you can do that, right? I need to be close enough to be effectively assist you in the team assisting situation. So just be aware as we go through this. I do think it's important to note the caveat in technical diving. It's when I am not diving with my wife, it's fairly rare that I get into a situation where I've got a teammate to dive with. I've been on a ton of technical boats, and the last one I went a few weeks ago when we went out, there was 11 of us on the boat. I lovingly call it a Halloween dive. We got to the bottom. I had a buddy that in fact, I was friends with everybody on the boat, and I buddied up with one of my friends. His name's Scott. Good guy, hell of a good diver. We got to the bottom, and it was like Halloween. They became ghosts and disappeared. You wouldn't believe it, but 11 people went in 11 different directions on the same damn boat. It was actually pretty impressive. So one of the things we're going to work on is your self-reliance, but I encourage you guys to work as closely as you can in a team environment where you're working with somebody else. The majority of accidents that happen in technical diving are related to a breakdown of the team environment. It's terrifying. The number one killer in technical diving is wrong gas usage. And the good news is we're going to go through how to avoid that. I've seen it happen a few times where somebody started to use the wrong gas. That's what your buddy's for. No, wrong gas. Stop them, right? You pay attention. You work in a team environment. But just be aware that the real relationship in technical diving often becomes Halloween diving, and you need to be reasonably self-sufficient and self-confident to be able to handle these of your own of fruition. And cave diving is a whole different thing. I do cave dive. I'm not great at it. It's not my thing. If I have to squeeze my fat ass through a hole, then I'm just not going. Sorry, you guys have fun. I'll see you at the bar. It's all good. I am a big wreck diver. I love penetrating wrecks, but when it comes to after I have to squeeze my ass through something, that's about where I stop. Right? I can get through pretty small enclosures, but that's if I have to squeeze and I have to push, I'm done. So in those environments, team diving is a must. And when I do wreck penetrations, I'm absolutely with at least 1 to 3 other people in that situation. But if we're just doing an exterior of the wreck, it kind of goes in its way. So just kind of throw that out there. But we start working in a team environment to make sure that we're taken care of. So when you're diving in a team and you start planning this out with a buddy, is to your advantage to gas match. Make sure, okay, we're planning this dive. We're going to do 2140 as our bottom gas. We're both going to do 50% for our Deco 1. We're going to do 80% for our Deco 2. And here's the reason. And we're going to put together a dive plan. We're going to be down. Our bottom time is going to be X. It's going to be 25 minutes at 150 feet. And then from that, we're going to come up, we're going to call it and head up to 70 feet for our first Deco match, Deco ceiling. And then from that point, we're going to switch over to our first gas. We're going to go ahead and go to 60 feet. We're going to go to 50 feet. And these are going to be our timelines. And it's to your advantage. You'll be a hell of a lot safer if you gas match and plan match with your buddy. Weird shit happens on tech dives, that's for sure. So as you got to go through this process and you start ordering that gas, it's cool to figure out for yourself, but also talk with your buddy. In my opinion, one of the least used skills in diving, and one of the biggest problems I run into is lack of good communication. If we just communicate ahead of time, okay, my dive plan is this, your dive plan is this, cool, let's match them up. Let's talk about my hand signal for changing levels is going to be this. I use 1 through 5, 6 through 9. This is how I do this. My Deco symbol is this. My clear, if you go through a few basic ideas, you definitely can save yourself a tremendous amount of headaches. One of the things I will do to you guys, I've got a whole bevy of fun hand and arm signals. I will try and teach you some things through just pure hand and arm signals that you may or may not have seen before, just to show you and see if you A, pick it up, or B, it creates a question at the surface. And my hope is it creates a question at the surface. And we can discuss what I was trying to show you in more depth. But I'd like you to get the idea. The hell did he say? We won't do anything that's not safe, right? I'll make sure everything we do is safe, and it won't cause a safety factor. But I told one of my buddy on this last time, I says, look there, shark, no, pet. So, and he got it. It was kind of fun. I told him, don't pet the damn shark. There was a nice little 12-foot bull shark coming right past us. Don't pet the shark. It's not fun. Or no riding shark, don't go ride the shark. But I'll do little fun things like that just to see if you're paying attention, see where you're at. And it's my way of kind of judging how you're coming along and what's going on with you physiologically and mentally as well. And some people pick it up instantly. Some people don't. It's all good if you don't. And it's all good, but at least hopefully it'll develop questions at the surface. Other heads up as well. I will play other little games with you to see if you're paying attention. Sometimes I won't switch to my Deco blend just to see if you're watching me, because I'm your dive buddy. If I don't switch to my Deco gas, something's possibly wrong. Am I looped out? Am I hypercapnic? Am I narked? Am I just lazy? What's going on? So I will do little things like that just to see if you're paying attention as well. Luckily, most of you will be in a, let's see, Randy, I think you and I are, LaBoy, I think you and I are diving together. And I believe Randy Beckman is going to be with you on that as your dive buddy as well. Let's see, Tim, Peyton, you two are diving together. And then Randy, we'll figure out when you're going to dive. Randy, Randy, I never can't pronounce your damn last name.
Cowboy.
Huh?
Cowboy.
Cowboy?
That works in the shop.
All right, Tex. All right. So as we go through this process, I'm trying to put you guys together so you guys have some team opportunities. So Randy Beckman meet Randy LaBoy.
It's going.
As a dive buddy, so you'll have that opportunity. I'll be watching you guys, and one of the things I will judge is your ability to watch each other on a team environment. Dan and Peyton, same thing. Yeah, you guys are friends already, so that makes it even easier. You're not insta buddies, but I'll be judging your ability to look after each other and go through this dive. Make sense?
Sounds good.
Cool.
All right, went through a lot of stuff as we go through this process. So let's talk a little bit about the lungs and how the lungs work. And so it's pretty basic stuff, right? The air goes in our mouth, down our throat, down our trachea into the lung. So and in the lungs, we have about 300 million of these little alveolars. And the alveolar is kind of interesting. It works in conjunction with the hemoglobin. And what it does is it takes the oxygen directly out of the air and it puts it into the hemoglobin. And there's a hemoglobin barrier. And one of the most interesting things, I think at least, is that most people don't realize is it only allows about 12 to 14% of the oxygen to pass. So if we're breathing 21%, it's only really letting 14% into the system. That's all the hemoglobin barrier can really uptake and stand as it goes through the process. Nitrogen and helium are free radicals, and they're able to just do whatever the hell they feel like. They're going into the tissue compartments, right? So they pass the hemoglobin barrier straight in. But the oxygen is pretty interesting as it goes through that process. So as we think about that, why do you think that might be important, Victoria?
Because it's really helping you understand like how much oxygen you're really getting throughout the process.
Absolutely. So one of the other things to kind of realize is what happens if we have a dam and the dam can only allow 14% of the overall volume that comes to it to pass over it. What happens if we have 200% volume come at the dam? I think the easiest.
It's going to overflow.
Yeah, it's going to overflow. Bad shit happens, right? Well, this is where we start getting into the idea of toxicity, right? Is when we start letting too much oxygen in, it overwhelms the hemoglobin barrier. It allows too much oxygen into the system. And this can cause two major effects. The first one is pulmonary oxygen toxicity. And yes, it's abbreviated POT. Pulmonary oxygen toxicity is when the oxygen overwhelms the hemoglobin barrier. It actually can cause an issue in the alveolar and in the lung structure. It starts to harden, and pulmonary oxygen toxicity, here's what it looks like when it starts happening. You start getting a tightness in the chest, soreness in the throat, coughing. And it can actually get to the point where it overwhelms the hemoglobin barrier so much that the hemoglobin literally, I'm done, throws its hands up in the air and said, I can process no more oxygen today. I'm going home. And if it's not processing any oxygen, what happens?
You suffocate.
Absolutely. Asphyxiation. So you can literally asphyxiate on too much oxygen. Kind of interesting? So that's the first thing we need to be aware of is we're breathing too high a partial pressure of oxygen, we can actually go into pulmonary oxygen toxicity. The other part of that is as we're processing too much oxygen, it actually can go in and it oversensitizes the neuron in our brain. And it doesn't allow the transmission of electrical signals from one to the other. And that's bad, right? It happens to me every day as I'm trying to remember what the hell I did with my car keys. But at diving, it becomes even worse as we go through this process. It starts reducing the ability to transfer that information. And so we start getting into CNS, central nervous system toxicity. We're overwhelming the central nervous system. And as you might think, as we're overwhelming the central nervous system, the brain, other things happen. Narrowing of vision, nausea, dizziness, lack of ability to see, lack of ability of balance, tingling. All these things, any of them sound familiar? Anybody heard any of those symptoms before?
Mm-hmm.
Similar to narcosis.
in a roundabout way. Narcosis is a little bit different. It's a overwhelming with a narcotic of the Myers-Overton says it's an overwhelming and a desensitizing of the neurons, right? And causing an overwhelming impairment of it. This is doing it. This is actually damaging the neuron transmission points, not just numbing it with an anesthetic. This is actually damaging it to the point where it's not transmitting at all. So it's same but different, right? So as we start getting into this, so we have to be very cognizant as we go through this process. How much oxygen am I uptaking for how long? And there absolutely is a clock. Now, interesting enough, they actually just changed the clock, and that's going to start flowing through the system into computers in the next probably 10 years. But they just, at DEMA, they just announced that they changed the clock. So we get a little bit more time on the clock, which is kind of good. But the other place this actually starts becoming apparent is the other side of the coin, the nitrogen. What ends up happening as we start going deeper, the partial pressure of nitrogen starts increasing. It's going into our venous system and into the tissue compartments. Now, the tissue compartments that are like the fat, our bone structure, our muscles, those are all tissue compartments that are absorbing things like a sponge. And we say that they perfuse. They're absorbing or perfusing this gas into them. Well, Billman, who was a really smart guy, came across and he said, I believe, looking at the previous dynamics, that there's actually 16 tissue compartments overall. And I'm going to classify those tissue compartments from fast to slow. Now, guys, this is just an academic way of classifying tissue compartments. And you can't go and say, okay, tissue compartment 3 is your liver. Tissue compartment 1 is your brainstem. You can't do that. It doesn't quite work like that. So it's a theoretical division of tissue compartments that doesn't match up exactly to things, but at least it gives us an idea and a visualization of how this works. So we have these 16 tissue compartments from fast to slow. So obviously, as we go down, our fast tissue compartments are going to on-gas this nitrogen and helium, by the way, faster than any other tissue compartment. Our tissue compartment 16 is going to be our longest tissue compartment, our slowest, right? So it's going to absorb tissue, this nitrogen, the slowest as we go through that. We like to think about the slow tissue compartments being like fat is a great one, right? It takes a while for things to absorb through a fat layer, right? We've all seen a deep fryer with all that fat in it. We're like, oh, and it gets hard and, just nothing absorbs through that process. So that's what we're dealing with. So this nitrogen is going in and helium is absorbing into these tissue compartments at different rates. So we start looking at these tissue compartments and we start classifying them. And we start saying a tissue compartment is either well perfused or poorly perfused, right? As we go through this process, the longer we're down, the more well perfused, more absorbed a tissue compartment is. And we like to think about that like a sponge. So if this was a sponge, it can absorb a little bit of liquid, a little bit more liquid, but there's a point where it can only absorb so much liquid. And we say that is a well perfused or fully perfused tissue compartments. And it can hold no more. It's at point. Our bodies are designed to be in equilibrium with everything around us, and that's what's happening. So as we go down, we talked about earlier the idea that as we go down to 66 feet, the partial pressure of nitrogen at 66 feet was how much? What was the partial pressure of nitrogen at 66 feet?
2.38.
2.37. You're really close. So we're coming into equilibrium. So our body's trying to equalize these tissue compartments at 66 feet to 2.37 partial pressure of nitrogen. Okay. And it's going to take a while. We measure this amount of absorption in what we consider half times. Halftime is just like we learned in 6th grade science with nuclear fission. We get the idea that at halftime is the amount of time it takes it to ungas by 50%. So obviously the halftime of a slow tissue compartment is going to be a long time. Just to give you an idea, that's 637 minutes for the halftime for a tissue compartment number 16. Tissue compartment number 1 is about 2 minutes. So about 2 minutes to 66 feet, tissue compartment 1 is what we'd say well perfused or fully perfused. And now we're absorbing into tissue compartment 2, to tissue compartment 3, and so on, because they all absorb at different rates. Now, what ends up happening as we start to ascend in the water column, the partial pressure of that nitrogen that we've been breathing changes. Our body now wants to come back into equilibrium and be at that. So now if we change from 2.37 to 1.2 partial pressure of nitrogen, our body wants to be back at that. Well, now that we get to the point where we're oversaturated, right? We've gone to M value, the maximum value amount that it can hold, and the nitrogen has to come out of the tissue compartment into the venous system, into the bloodstream, and has to go somewhere, right? So the reason we come up slowly or we use deco stops is because we don't want that nitrogen to come out too quickly. Too quickly is bad, right? Too quickly of any gas into a liquid becomes
Bubbles.
Right? Bubbles in the bloodstream, bad, right? Anybody ever watch any of those Nancy Drew specials in the 80s where the nurse went in to kill the patient, stuck a big old hypodermic needle in him with a big thing of air? The guy has a heart attack and dies. How did he die? How did he die? Well, we found the bubbles in the bloodstream, so he had the heart attack, right? So we know from every Nancy Drew special in the 80s that bubbles in the bloodstream, probably not a good thing, right? So our job is to manage the size of the bubbles in the bloodstream with our ascent rate and our deco stops. That's the whole goal here. And like I said earlier, the biggest thing I'm really teaching you is how to manage nitrogen in your bloodstream. So we start using this idea of M values. Well, the M values are pretty slick. And as we came across this idea, Buhlman said, okay, the M value of each tissue compartment is this. And here's how long it takes to get there. As we start to ascend, we need to ascend at this rate to allow the gas to come out. Well, one of the ways we can manage this is not only using the algorithm that Buhlman used and gave us, which is a beautiful algorithm. 16C is the most common algorithm in the world for all technical diving. There are a couple others out there, and you will find that very few people use them. They're pains in the ass to use. I've tried them, played with them, not a fan. But we say, okay, Buhlman at this rate is bad, at this rate is good, right? Well, what if we wanted to add a safety margin to that? Would a safety margin to the algorithm of how fast this gas is coming out be a good thing?
Sure. Yes.
Absolutely. So as we start thinking about this, and by the way, if you guys see me turn left, that's because I'm actually looking at you. My camera's on the right. Sorry about that. As we start thinking about this, we've got the algorithm that says this is how fast it's coming out. But what we want to do is we as technical divers want to add an additional safety factor to this, of how fast we want the gas to come out and what points we want it to change from being a recreational dive to a technical dive, and where those safety stops are going to be. So somebody smart came along and they said, let's go ahead and add what we call a gradient factor to this. So has anybody played with their gradient factors on their computers yet? All right, good, new ground to cover. Awesome. So all your computers should, your technical computers will have the ability to adjust your gradient factors. And gradient factors are divided into two separate numbers. The first number is GF low. The second number is GF high. Both numbers are very important, and both of them add a specific level of safety to your dive. So let's talk about GF low first. GF low is the depth of your first stop. Okay, it's important, very important, and it's important for a couple of reasons that we're going to go through in just a moment. So what it does is it says, okay, my GF low, typically I set my GF low to 50. That means that at 50% of the maximum M value, my computer's going to say, whoop, stop, up. Bad shit's going to happen if you go much farther. And it's going to allow me to get to that point where my gas will start to be able to dissolve into the liquid out of my tissue compartments, into my bloodstream, and eventually be exhaled. And so it's the depth of my first stop. Now you might ask yourself this question. Well, why, if 50 is good, why isn't 30 better? Well, sounds reasonable, right? Why not make your GF low 30 so that you have a 70% safety margin? Wouldn't that be better? Sounds
Slower
reasonable.
tissues could be on gassing still, or
Ding, 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 ding. You got it. So oddly enough, back in the 80s, there's this guy's awesome. His name's Richard Pyle. He is a researcher at the University of Hawaii. He's still alive, by the way. And he was doing deep air dives hunting for fish. 200-foot air dives. And he discovered that if he didn't stop at half the distance, at 100 feet, and pierce the swim bladder of his fish, that the swim bladder would explode, it would ruin the meat, and the meat was bad. But then he discovered something second. He discovered that when he stopped at half the depth, that he felt better after a dive. Now, I'll tell you the story in a minute, but utilizing the I feel better after a dive to determine your safety factors is a really poor indicator of that as well. And I'll tell you some stories about that in a minute from the Navy. But he came up with this idea called deep stops, and it caught on like wildfire. We called them pile stops or deep stops, right? And the idea is that you stop half the distance of your deepest depth, and you do a safety stop at this deeper depth. Well, the problem is what they didn't realize is the computers see life in 3 dimensions. Or I'm sorry, your body works in 3 dimensions. The computer only sees it in 2 dimensions. So the computer was seeing, okay, the lead tissue compartment, cool, it's off gassing. The problem is the real tissue compartments we want to off gas are hidden behind the lead tissue compartments. And typically your tissue compartments number 4 through 9 are your mid tissue compartments. And at that deepest depth, when you do those deep stops like that, are going to be on gassing more than your fast and your lead tissue compartment are off gassing. And the problem here is your computer can say, okay, hey, I see you're off gassing, good job. It doesn't see that, wait a minute, I'm still on gassing at the deeper depth. So we want to make sure we use a point that's shallow enough that it allows us to off gas, but not deep enough that allows us to continue on gassing in mid tissue compartments. So the current wisdom and the current research suggests that we keep that around 45 to 55. I split the difference in the middle at 50, and I am none the worse off for using that. So my first deco stop is determined by my GF low, and I typically use 50 for that. That way I'm not on gassing more than I'm off gassing at that point. So the depth of my deepest stop, my first stop. The second number we look at is GF high. And this number is equally important. And that is
Hey, Ben, I got a question for you, man.
Yes, sir.
When you're saying 45 to 55 or 50 as your round number, are you talking about feet or as a percentage of your deepest depth?
No, a percentage of your gradient factor.
Of your gradient factor.
Gradient factor is a factor that we're placing against. It's like a governor against the algorithm of Buellman's algorithm.
It's a funny number. Okay, gotcha.
Yep, it's a governance number over the algorithm. So it has nothing to do really with feet. It has to do with M value. I mean, how much gas is allowed to come out of your tissue compartments at one time. That's a great question, though. Thank you for clarifying. I love having these bigger classes because somebody was thinking that too. So good job, Tim, for asking. And I encourage you guys, stop me anytime, ask all you want. That's the overall goal with this. Because if you're thinking it, somebody else is thinking it too. As we go through that. So GF high is the other side of that. And that is the length of your last stop. And that's also important. So as we go through this process, the current thinking on the gradient factor high is between 75 and 85. Typically. The reason being is that gives us between a 15 and 25% safety margin from M value 100%. At M value 100%, we're almost guaranteed that everything above that is going to get DCS. Now here's the problem. Peyton, the way I absorb nitrogen and off-gas nitrogen is going to be significantly different than you. And it has nothing to do with whether I like you or not, or if you've got a cool haircut. It has nothing to do with any of that. My physiology is just different than yours. Same thing with you, Randy LeBoy, or Mr. Beckman, or Tex Earnhardt. We all have a different rate of absorption based upon a lot of factors, based upon my health, my age, my physical ability, how much I exercise, how much hydration I've had, how well I slept, how tired I am. My mental state kicks into this as well. If I have a feeling of doom, if I think bad things are going to happen, bad things are probably going to happen, right? So all those factors go into effect, and they affect how well your body off gases. So today, I might be able to get to 100% and not get DCS. Tomorrow, I might not be able to get, if I got to 90%, I might get DCS. So one of the things I hear a lot of, and I hate this, I have people come in our shop and they said, oh, my buddy had an undeserved DCS hit. Sure they did. And my answer, 99% chances out of 100 is bullshit. And here's why. When we go back and we look at the data on these people's computer that are getting these undeserved hits, typically they're diving a very aggressive profile. They're diving 95-95 is what I've seen several times. And they'll do multiple dives in a day, multiple dives in a week, diving a 95-95 with a 5% safety margin. I can tell you, I drive a really cool sports car. I'm really proud of my cool little car. But if I spent every day driving it at 95% of RPM max, at some point I'm going to blow the damn engine. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, right? And same thing with diving. If I'm diving within a 5% safety margin of Buellman's algorithm, that, by the way, the algorithm was designed for that 19-year-old Navy guy who eats right, 3 squares a day, sleeps, drinks a gallon of water every single day, writes his mom every third Thursday, and does all these wonderful things. I'm not even in the same class with this guy, right? He's running 5 miles in freaking 30 minutes. Good on you, dude. I can't do that. I process nitrogen differently than him. So for me to be try and push my body within 5% of his, probably not the best idea in the entire world. And people don't get that. You've got to dive conservatively enough for your age. I see it this is a real story, by the way, 62-year-old woman, office worker, significantly overweight, decides one day that she got certified 15 years ago. The local dive shop has decided they want to have a dive in Roatan. They're going to do a dive trip to Roatan. They go stay at I can't think of the name of the resort, but they do a lot of shore diving. Anthony's Key. And so they've got a ton of shore diving. The instructor trainer there at this local shop decides, sweet, you should come with us. Absolutely. Let's do your refresher on Monday. Let's do your deep class on Tuesday. Let's do your navigation at night and limited visibility on Wednesday. And we fly out Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, on this particular person and instructor, they dove all day Friday. They did 5 dives. Saturday, they did 5 dives. Sunday, they did 4 dives because on the 4th dive, it was a reverse profile dive. They swam 300 yards out to a wreck and did a 130-foot dive. That was their last dive. Guess who had a heart attack? Unfortunately, it wasn't the instructor. So diving within your ability and understanding that, holy shit, people age. I promise you, I have learned a lot more about aging this last week than I wanted to remember. I had the brilliant idea to throw twin sets on my back on Friday and do a little dance down the red carpet for a YouTube or for a fun YouTube post. Man, I paid for it. Oh man, my back is not a happy camper. I am, and as my mom told me, son, you're not 19 in the Marine Corps anymore. Thanks, Mom. Right? So realize that having an appropriate safety margin in any of these dives is to your advantage. Generally, for recreational dives, I keep my gradient factor high at 85, which is a nice conservative for recreational diving. For technical diving, I do it between 75 and 80. If I'm doing a really big one, I'm going out and doing a 300-foot dive. Absolutely, my gradient factor high, 75 all day long. And if I've worked extra hard, I'll spend a little extra time at my final deco stop, and I'll spend an extra time at my body deco as well. So be aware that this is your way of saying, okay, cool, we're going to go out and do this dive, but I want to make sure that I have enough margin for error in my safety factor so that I don't get DCS. I want to allow the gas to come out of tissue into solution at a slow enough rate that they're still bubble seeds and silent bubbles. When they start moving past that, bad shit happens. And I don't know about you, but I'm not into the bad shit. So excuse my language, but I did retire from the Marine Corps, so I tend to let an F-bomb here go once in a while. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So we use this magic thing called a gradient factor. And that's how we use it to our advantage. Now, one of the things I hear people say all the time, well, I increased my gradient factor to a less conservative profile, to a more aggressive profile, because all my last 20 dives, I felt better. Cool. That's not the right reason to do it. And here's why. The Navy did a double-blind study at Netto, and God bless, I love Netto. Netto is my favorite organization in the world because their whole job is to find 100 stupid sailors and say, hey, our goal today is to, this week is to go out and see if we can get you bent. Our goal is to see if we can hurt you. Wow. And the fact that they find 100 Navy guys that want to do this, impressive, right? Good on you guys. If any of you are in the Navy, I love the Navy. Every time I needed a ride, you guys were right there for me, right? But that's their whole job. They find guys and they test them. That's their whole job, is to try and find out, where can I get you bent today? Cool. But they did a double-blind study, and they said, okay, you guys, we're going to take you on a dive, and we're going to put you on a conservative profile, and we're going to have you dive. And we want you to tell you how you feel after this dive. Well, the first group of dives, they put them on a very aggressive profile, but they told them it was a conservative profile. Guess how many of them said they felt really good after that dive?
Only the Marines.
See, they had no Marines because Marines were smart enough to really try to go out and get hurt. 91% on an aggressive dive who were told that it was going to be a conservative profile felt better after the dive. They flipped it. They said, we're going to put you guys all on an aggressive profile, but they actually put them on a very conservative profile. And they said, how do you guys feel after the dive? 87% of them said, oh, we feel much worse. It goes to show you that your mental picture of how this dive is going to be has a much bigger impact on how you'll feel after a dive than just about anything else. So realize, if I go into this dive, I am so excited. This is going to be an awesome dive. I'm diving conservative. I'm going to see the Mullifin today. It's 115 feet of fizz. Water temperature is 75 degrees. Woo! I'm probably going to come out of the water. In fact, I can tell you one of the most exciting dives. I didn't want to do my deco stops. I did them. Back in November, we sunk a boat, a cargo ship off the coast of Stuart here, about 8 miles. We saw it's called the Brocho. And first time I got to be part of sinking a ship. We got on board. We put two Insta360s on this boat. One of them in the wheelhouse that faced out and faced back into the wheelhouse. One of them on the bow of the boat that faced the rest of the way to the bow, and one to the back. We got to climb all around this thing. I even got the captain's teacup sitting right here on my desk. We went back on our boat and we watched this thing sink. It's really cool. I have it on YouTube if you want to watch it. It's a pretty cool video. And it sunk. And so my job was, after it sunk, to jump in the water, go down to 200 feet, grab the cameras off, get some video real quick, and come back. Well, we all figured for sure that we weren't going to get the cameras back. I figured we had about a 20 to 30% chance that I actually find the damn cameras, right? But I figured at the very least, I'd take my camera with me and I'd get some cool video. Well, I get down, I found the bow of the ship and I found the first camera. I was like, sweet, I got one of them, and I'm getting cool video, and I get the camera all tucked up. Went the whole length of the ship, got to the wheelhouse, went down to the wheelhouse, found my second camera. I was like, oh my God, I found both cameras. Holy crap, this did work, man. And so I get the other camera off. I went ahead and followed the wheelhouse down because she landed on her starboard side, went down to the sand, got some cool video looking up, looking around. Saw some crap in the dirt, came back up, went along the port side of the ship, and then went ahead and headed up. And I can tell you that the level of excitement that I found both cameras, I was the first person to ever dive this wreck, got to watch her sink, was immense. It was so cool. And I can tell you that no matter, even if I was getting ready to get the bends, when I got done with that dive, I still would have felt like $1 million. It was pretty intense. Those were the longest damn deco stops ever. Usually I chill out. I think about, whatever. I do my little Zen zone during my my deco stops. I can almost fall asleep, but I was like a kid on Christmas morning. I got to open this package. I want to see the video. It was really cool. So I can tell you your mental outlook as you go into a dive has a great deal to do with how you'll come out of that dive as well. If you have a positive outlook and you're excited and everything's good, you've done all your checks, you've done walk through your ABCs on everything of this, you'll have a great dive, right? with this. But utilizing the, I feel like, is a really good way to get hurt. I have a friend that recently got the opportunity to do a Schedule 6 in the chamber for 6 hours. And I talked to him about it. I told him, Dan, I know what was going on. I know you're a freaking idiot. Tell me what your computer was at. He's like, I don't want to tell you. You're going to be mad. I'm like, no, I'm not going to be mad, but I'm going to make fun of you. But what was your computer? Show me. He had his computer at 95.95, and he was his 16th dive of the week. He was determined to get his limit of lobsters every single day, and also get some AJs and everything else, and ended up getting the bends. And I'm like, dude, Dan, you're 63-year-old podiatrist, man. You are not in shape to be doing a 95.95. He says, yeah, but I kept feeling better after every single dive, so I realized I was losing time at depth in my NDL because I was at such a conservative profile. Brilliant, dude. Brilliant. So be aware that utilizing how I feel, not the best indicator of how this works. So as we kind of continue through the process, the other piece of this as well is now you guys are going to start learning the wonderment of the decompression gas. We start moving into the idea of accelerated decompression. And the way I like to think about accelerated decompression is we're moving up to 1.6 partial pressure oxygen. Okay, so we may be using a 50% blend, a 70% blend, or an 80% blend. Those are the most common ones I use for this class. And we'll plan out our dives, and we'll at a later point we'll figure out which one we're going to use and why. As to go this process. But the way to think about this is we talked about earlier that the body will only let so much oxygen in at any given time, right? Does that make sense? So I like to think about the body kind of like a freeway going into LA. It's like I-5 going into LA. So you have 10 lanes going in, 10 lanes going out. Well, you know that only so many lanes can come in of the oxygen. So if we only have so many lanes coming in, only so much can come in the city. But if we open up all 10 lanes coming out, we can let more out, right? So that's what's happening when we're using accelerated decompression. We're not letting as much nitrogen in the system, so we're able to off-gas the nitrogen that is in our system more quickly because it's not being replaced. It's the rule of dilution, right? The solution to pollution is dilution, is what my wife likes to say. So the easiest way to dilute out the nitrogen in our system is not add more, right? So if we produce the nitrogen in the blend we're using, so for example, we're using 80%, that means the gas blend only has 20% nitrogen in the system to allow into the system. We have to have a little bit in there because we want to soothe the nerve endings a little bit, but it's, excuse me, it's a lot better than if we were using 21%, which was 79% nitrogen. It becomes a hard road to hoe if we're allowing 79% of the nitrogen to come in and we're trying to get nitrogen to come out of the system. It decompresses and off gas is a lot slower. Does that make sense? Is that a good analogy for you?
Yep.
Yep. So we're trying to, if we've got, black cars coming in and black cars coming out, if we let less black cars coming in than we let coming out, we get more of the black cars out of the city. And eventually we get to that point of magic equilibrium. We're in Zen zone of coolness. That makes sense? So using a decompression gas, some of the things we're going to consider in this is, first off, is how much tension that gas is going to cause my body, right? The easy math is, okay, well, I'm going to do a 150-foot dive. Why don't I just use 90% decompression gas? Cool. Well, what's the mod for 90%? Anybody know?
30 feet.
30 feet, right? So that means to get to my first decompression stop, I have to come up from whatever depth to 30 feet. That's a pretty significant pressure change, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be to our advantage to maybe take that down to 50%? What's the maximum operating depth of 1.6? 50%. Anybody know?
70
feet. Randy's got all the answers there. You're bucking for the gold star, man. I like it. So come in the shop. I'll have a gold star for you tomorrow. There you go. Guys, if you don't know, Cal Worthington and his dog Spot and Randy both are local. So I see them in the shop pretty regularly. But as we go through this process, if we come up to 70 feet and work our way up from 70 feet, that's a lot slower off gassing and a lot less tension on our body because we're dealing a lot lower pressure differentiation. So making the argument that just using the highest blend of nitrox decompression gas I could use is not always the best one. We have to realize how far I'm going to have to come up in the water column to get to use that first. How much tension on my body is it going to cause? Because I can promise you, after a decompression dive, a big one, you will be tired. I don't care how much nitrox you did, or how many miles you can run in 6 minutes. You will be tired after a decompression dive. It just is. Your body is working, and there's a lot of tension in your body as this gas is coming out of tissue into solution. It just is. So one of the things we want to consider is how much tension on my body am I willing to put? Now, the trade-off of that is because everything has a trade-off, right, guys? If I buy my wife flowers, then I'm expected to do something else, right? There's a trade-off, right? I got to spend more time with her. I can't just give her flowers and go fishing for the rest of the weekend and expect that things are going to be good. I give her flowers, I got to spend some time, right? I don't get to go fishing, so I get less fishing time, but more time with my wife. So it's a trade-off. We got to figure that out. In this particular case, the trade-off is if I use a lower blend decompression mix, then I'm going to spend more time in deco. It's all a balancing act. So we start adding some ideas into this idea of what the best deco blend is going to be. So what happens?
Are you carrying 2 tanks with a different blend?
In this class, you'll only be carrying 1. I'm going to teach you guys how to use a single decompression blend. The next class after this, which is trimix, you can go to 2 to 3 to 4 tanks if you'd like. In just standard trimix, there's not really a good argument for using more than 2 deco blends. You've got to be down for some pretty significant amount of time to go to a 3rd deco blend. I mean significant, where it really gets to the point where you're using 3 tanks is when you go past 200 feet.
Is that with helium?
And you're going to learn to use helium in this class.
Okay.
Absolutely. So we're using just 1 deco blend for this class to get used to and understand how that is. But other considerations we want to be aware of as we're starting to choose our decompression gas, it's not only the stress, but what happens if there's an emergency. So we start planning for other emergencies as well, the what if contingencies. What happens if I drop my new $10,000 camera and I planned on a 170-foot dive and it went to 200 feet? What happens if I suddenly see 3 mermaids and a whale shark at my 150-foot mark, and I was supposed to leave the bottom at 25 minutes, but if I see 3 mermaids and a whale shark, I'm going to want to stay and watch that for a little bit and get some more pictures, right? So what happens if I stay longer? What happens if I go deeper? What happens if? And a lot like if any of you ride motorcycles, especially in Florida, oh my God, you learn to play the what if game. And the what if is what happens if that idiot comes into my lane? I've had that happen where I was at a cement median and somebody came all the way into my lane. And I literally had to knock on her freaking window because I couldn't go ahead. I couldn't go back. I was boxed in and I'm knocking on her window and the stupid woman looked at me like, ah, right. Great. So you got to play the what if game. What happens if? What am I going to do if this happens? What am I going to do if that happens? So you start planning these out. I like to think of the best accident is the one that doesn't happen. And the way that you prevent that is you plan for it. You make sure it says, okay, what happens if? So we make sure we choose our gas based upon how long can I stay? How much gas can I carry? What happens if this happens? What happens if I lost all my gas? What happens if? What happens if you descended a little deeper than what you thought? What happens if you lose your back gas? So in choosing your overall gases, you need to think about the overall contention. What happens if my buddy runs out of gas? I was on a technical. We were doing a 175-foot dive, and we came up to our first deco stop, and I watched it happen. My buddy's regulator blew up on his 50%. Okay. That's not the best situation in the world, but we planned for that, right? We were prepared for that. If we lost the gas, what happens if? We had enough gas in his back gas. We did longer decos on the way up. I switched back to my back gas, so we were set just in case, and I followed him in pattern, and we had enough back gas to be able to get to our next eco stop, which we had our second gas in it. It happens, right? But we need to make these plans, the what ifs. What happens to me externally, but I also need to plan what happens to me internally as well. Does that make sense, guys? All right, guys, I talked a lot. Tex, what did you learn in the last 30 minutes? Randy? Tex?
I got a lot more to learn. Honest.
No, there's
Gradient factors I don't understand as well as I should.
okay. Anybody else feel that?
I have a lot better understanding now.
Yeah.
I was thinking that the gradient factor high had something to do with your last eco stop, the depth, but I have a better understanding now that it's got to do with the length of time of your last stop.
Correct. Your last stop is going to be fixed. Your last stop is going to be 20 feet. So if we put a constant factor on that, your last stop is 20 feet, then all it can do is the only other factor it can control was time. Now, typically, we always do our last deco stop at 20 feet, especially here in Florida. And there's there's a lot of math that goes into why that is. But here's the most important thing. Does anybody know what the three classifications to become a captain are in Florida? There's three of them. Yes, there's a joke coming. I see Tim over there. He says, I think there's a joke coming. Visa, MasterCard, American Express. Those are the three classifications of private captains in Florida. And so I can tell you that I have been 15 feet away from a 54-foot Viking doing 40 knots that came right past me. I reached up and gave him a very clear symbol to let him know that I thought he was number one. And he looked at me like, what? I had a nice 6-foot SMB. I was close. He was close enough that I thought about descending. So even if you have an SMB up, 20 feet will keep you out of the depth of most props of most private vessels. So it keeps you at a safer depth. So that's the biggest reason I can tell you why we do this. There's a lot of math why 20 feet is great. But the number one is it generally will keep you out of the range of a prop. And in my experience, man versus prop usually wins. So, okay. What else did you learn, Randy L? LeBoy?
Oh, mine got stolen. I was the gradient factors, finally being able to understand. It's like one of the last things on my dive computer. I didn't know what it was.
Gotcha. Well, cool. I'm going to give you two others that you may not have considered that have everything to do with that. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. And I think I'm going to blow your doors because there's two things that your Perdix computers will do that are freaking amazing. I love it. And there's actually a lot more than that, but these two factors will tie into that. I think you're going to love it. Peyton, what did you pick up?
Honestly, some of the same stuff with the gradient factor. I wanted to ask just a clarifying question on that.
Sure.
When you were saying the numbers are, I don't say made up, but they're just arbitrary. And when we were talking about the GF low, you were using a factor of 45 to 55, and you were settling on 50. But did I understand you correctly that also worked out to 50 feet?
Negative.
Okay.
Negative. No, the gradient factor is a governor. It's like saying that I'll only allow my engine to rev to 6,000 RPM.
Okay.
It's a governance safety factor. And while the engine on my car can probably rev to 9,000 RPM, it's a way of putting a limiter on the ability of it to do it. It has nothing to do with depth. It has everything to do with the M value and the amount of gas absorbed in a tissue compartment.
Okay.
But isn't it so that gradient factor low and you set it at 50, that's 50, your first stop would be 50% of your max depth, correct?
No.
Your
Negative.
M value, right?
No, it's 50% of your M value. 50% where your lead tissue compartment is at 50% saturation, and it's allowing gas to come out of tissue into a solution. So so gradient factor has nothing to do with depth. It has to do with the amount of gas in your tissue compartments. So GF low is the depth of your first stop, and it's allowing your body to off gas. It determines the depth of your first stop based upon the amount of gas in your tissue compartments.
Okay.
Is that a little bit more clear?
That helped a little bit.
Perfect. Good. Thank you, guys. And like I said, I love teaching class where we have multiple students because I know that some things will go, and so somebody will think it, and somebody will say it, and everybody will learn. So, Peyton, continue. I'm sorry.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Let's see, Victoria, what did you pick up?
Kind of similar like everyone else, the gradient factors was big for me, but also I liked diving in a little bit more about the physiology, the 12 to 14% barrier for hemoglobin. That was, I put numbers on it before, so that was kind of new and refreshing.
Cool. That is one of the most interesting thing about the alveolar, in my opinion. Tim, what'd you pick up?
Yeah, I don't want to open up a can of worms with this, but I did write down the question. When you talk about standardized gases and how there's a particular dive agency that prefers standardized gases and mandates them, why does GUE do that, in your opinion?
That's a long conversation, to be honest with you. They're firm.
We can have it in the shop. I'll ask you again.
Absolutely.
That's on my mind.
No, that's fine. GUE, however you want to say it, guys under endowed. Just kidding. I heard that one the other day. I just laughed my ass off on that one. They believe firmly that if you standardize everything down to very simple choices, that it creates an additional level of safety for all divers involved. That if you and I dive, you're from Germany and I'm from Antarctica, and we're diving the GUE DRI system, DIR system in a Haggarthian setup, that no matter what, if we don't even speak the same language, that we're still going to be able to do the same dive, and we're still going to be able to be safe. It also makes it easier in mixing trimix, because if you, with their standardized mixes, you could fill a tank with a standard mix of 34%, add a particular amount of helium to it, and you'll come up with a standardized mix of trimix. If you do it with 32%, same thing. So they base all their standardized mixes off of simplicity of mixing trimix, which, by the way, mixing trimix, pain in the ass, no matter how you slice it. But if you always start with a 32% blend and you add X amount of helium to it, you'll come up with a standardized mix. And you can come up with 3 standardized mixes from 32% and 3 standardized mixes from 36%. So that's where they come up with their standards. There are 6 standardized mixes is for the mixing aspect. But it also comes back to the idea that if I simplify it to the point where I've got 6 total mixes I can choose from, boom, 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 boom. These 2 mixes are going to be for my 100 to 150 foot. These 2 mixes are going to be for my 150 to 200 foot mix. These 2 mixes are going to be 200 to 250, and these 2 mixes are going to be from 250 to 300. Boom. I've just simplified all diving for everybody everywhere. But unfortunately,
they don't work for everybody.
It doesn't. Right. And the other problem is that they don't take it into account as easily as they don't take into account gas density. So one of the things that we will teach here is we're going to get into gas density in a much deeper fashion. And their mixes don't take into account gas density as easily. So the mixes we will use will be higher amounts of helium than it typically taught, because I particularly like a low density mix. It's safer for you. It's safer for me. You'll be able to make better decisions. You'll remember more of the dive. You'll have a happier dive. It'll be an easier dive. And yes, it costs a little bit more, but to have a equivalent narcotic depth of 40 feet on a 200-foot dive, freaking amazing. Absolutely. And it'll cost you just a little bit more.
Does the lower density also make it easier to breathe at depth?
Absolutely. It reduces your work of breathing considerably. I am a huge believer of a low gas density as we go through that process. All right, so just kick through my notes to make sure I'm good to go. I tend to talk ahead of myself on my slides. All right, so let's get into a little bit of bubble model and get some understanding of how bubbles actually work in the bloodstream. So one of the things I like to kind of preface this with, guys, if I had one simple suggestion that I could tell you right now, that if you did this one thing, you reduce your chances of getting DCS by a factor of 10. Would that be reasonably interesting to anybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, cool. I happen to have that by chance. It's just weird coincidence. Our Danish friends did an interesting study about 15 years ago. What they determined that if you exercise 19 hours prior to a dive aerobically for 15 to 20 minutes, you reduce your chances of getting DCS by a factor of 10. Reasonably interesting. Now, guys, the why is even more interesting. So, Randy LeBoy, why do you think that is? Why do you think if I exercise the day prior to a dive that I reduce my chances of getting DCS by so much?
It would have to be a guess, but I would say it has something to do with cardiovascular improvement and being more efficient at gas exchange.
Okay. Randy Beckman, what do you think?
Similar, but it preps the alveoli and your bronchial for better exchange of the gases.
So
is what I would say.
Great guesses. Unfortunately, not correct. The interesting thing is what happens when you exercise is your body releases an enzyme. And the enzyme is an oily type of enzyme, and it releases it specifically in the venous system, the off-gassing portion of your system. Now, let's think about the venous system for just a minute. The venous system is a lot like a garden hose. Now, luckily, Peyton's young, so his garden hose is still brand new, fresh from Target, right? My garden hose is a little older. It's got some kinks in it, and as we've all seen that garden hose that we left out in the yard for 2 years, it gets a little cranky, it gets a little cracked, it gets a little stiff, and unfortunately, it doesn't work as nearly as well as Peyton's wonderful brand new Target garden hose. So
mine's leaking.
Absolutely. So what ends up happening is bubbles are coming out of the tissue compartments into solution, into the venous system. They're coming into de the garden hose, and they're going loop-de-loop-de-loop around and around and around, and they come into coarse spots. So we come into this idea that what ends up happening is the enzymes in the venous system lubricate that and allow them to slide through the process a little bit more easily. So it's a lot like this analogy here. Something we've probably all seen once or twice in our life. I know Peyton looks pretty young. I don't know if he's old enough to drink yet, but we'll see. So why do you think the bubbles at the bottom are so much smaller than the ones at the top in this 12-ounce bottle of beer or glass of beer?
Just like our lungs, as they ascend, it gets bigger.
Okay. Tim, what do you think? Why do you think the bubbles are bigger at the top versus the bottom?
My guess is at the bottom, they're just coming out of solution and they're still small, and there's more hydrostatic pressure on them.
Okay, so pressure. So how much pressure differentiation do you think is going to be in this? How tall do you think this glass is? 8 inches?
Yeah.
Okay. How much pressure differentiation do you think we have in a solution that's 8 inches?
Not much.
Not much. So it would be hard to say that a pressure differentiation could account for bubbles getting bigger in a solution. Randy, you want to take a guess?
More gas diffusing into them.
There you go. Ding, ding, ding. So what ends up happening is the bubbles, as they rise, they literally crash into each other and they perfuse together to become larger bubbles. So that's what's happening. So what ends up happening is these bubbles come out of solution in your out of your tissue compartments into your venous systems. You have a bunch of bubbles in there, right? So if they get trapped, turned, slowed down, impeded in any way, shape, or form, they can actually crash into each other, perfuse, and make a bigger bubble. So that's why this lubricant in our system is so overly important, is as it goes through the system, it's able to lubricate, and it doesn't allow it to slow down or stop and perfuse to another tissue or to another bubble as easily. It's the other reason that during diving, we always want to make sure we're well hydrated. We like to think about the blood as like a conveyor belt in the system, and hydration keeps that conveyor belt lubricated. So we want to make sure that we don't allow our blood to get soupy. And the way we do that is well hydrated. So if we stay well hydrated, we also reduce our chance of getting DCS by a factor of 4. So exercise the day before a dive and hydration reduces your chances of DCS pretty considerably. Make sense? Are we good?
Yes.
So what's ended up happening is we're coming to a point in our tissue compartments of supersaturation. As we're rising in the water column, we come to that point of supersaturation, and our cup doth runneth over is the way to think about it. The partial pressure in the tissue compartment is higher than the partial pressure in the bloodstream. So the bubbles have to come out, and we consider this to be the point of supersaturation. And so they suppress the level of what we consider M value. There's a higher pressure gas in one side and then on the other side. So it has to come out into solution. And so what we do with rising the water column slowly in these deco stops is we're managing the size of those bubbles coming out of the tissue compartment into the variable, into the bloodstream. Make sense? And the way we term that is small bubbles. We call those silent bubbles, the ones that can't see, the ones we can't measure. As they get bigger, they come out of tissue faster. They move into the idea of bubble seeds. We can measure those. We can measure those. They have a way to measure them in a Doppler. My wife and I actually have a personal Doppler that we measure our tissue compartments once in a while on both our collarbones. And then if you get really fancy, they got fancy Dopplers where you urinate into a cup and then they can measure the size of the bubbles. Whoever has that job has the crappiest job in the world. But there is a person out there that does that measures the size of the bubbles in the urine. So as they get bigger, we start to call them symptomatic bubbles. And as bubbles get larger and we start calling them symptomatic, a couple things happen. It's really, and I think this is extremely interesting. The first thing happens is they start getting trapped. And the first place they start getting trapped is places that bends, like joints. So that's why we say when we start getting the bends, we either start one of two things. We either get skin bends, which is DCS level 1. The bubbles have got large enough that they need to go somewhere. They're being pushed out. They push out through the skin, and that presents as a rash. Or we get DCS level 2, where we start getting pain in our joints. Right, bubbles are getting trapped in the joints, in the wrist, in the elbow, in the fingers, in the shoulders. We start feeling that pain. It's because things aren't there. But there's something else happening that's really interesting as well. Is as those bubbles come in, get large enough, there's another part of our blood that says, "Wait a minute! Oh shit! Bad stuff's happening," and it's our white blood cells, and they start going to war. When there's something that's not supposed to be there, the white blood cells will kick in, and they go to war. It's the same reason when you get really sick, you get on the couch, you lay on the couch, and you just feel, damn, I can't move. I just feel so sore. It's because your body is literally at war with something that's not supposed to be there. There's an infection there, and the white blood cells have gone to work, and they're fighting against it, and it's causing your body to work even though you don't realize what's going on. Your body's at war. Well, the same thing can happen as well when you're starting to get bubbles that are too large. Body will go to war. The white blood cells will literally start attacking these bubbles and causing a problem. So DCS actually happens two different ways. One, bubbles get too large, they start getting trapped. And two, your white blood cells start going to war with it. Now here's the last problem is when the bubbles get too large, even worse stuff happens. They can get trapped in, they can block portions of the heart. They can get into the brain. They can and they can start blocking portions of the brain. They can cause a heart attack. They can cause narrowing of vision, disorientation, all these wonderful things because the bubbles are starting to block blood flow where blood flow is supposed to be. That's what DCS is bubbles in the bloodstream. They're causing bubble blockages and stoppages of things that are supposed to be able to happen. You guys are learning to survive in an environment that's trying to kill you in so many ways. Kind of interesting, huh? Make sense?
Yes.
So now the wonderful thing is we're using this accelerated decompression model. And the great thing is if you were to, for example, do a dive to 150 feet for 40 minutes, if you were to decompress on just air, just 21% air, your decompression would probably be in the neighborhood of 40 minutes. If you were to switch that over to a 50% decompression mix at 1.6, your decompression time for that same dive is going to be 24 minutes. If you want to get super efficient and you would decide, okay, well, wait a minute, can I be more efficient? Sure. What if you did a 50% and 100%? You could reduce your total decompression time down to 19 minutes. Now, accelerated decompression allows your body to off gas at a significantly faster rate than just the traditional back gas alone. Does that make sense, guys?
Yep.
Good. All right. Let's talk about that magic. We talked a lot about it. We've kind of beat around the bush about it. We've got this magic thing called the decompression stop. So there's several pieces of the decompression stop. The first one is, what is it, right? The second part is we start dealing with something called a sealing. Other things we're going to need to talk about in this particular portion is going to be safety stops. What happens if we miss that safety stop? And body decompression. Okay. So decompressions. What is a decompression stop? Randy? L? LeBoy? What's a decompression stop?
So stop where we're going to decompress, as the name would suggest.
Okay. When would we do a heat decompression stop?
You mean like during the plan, or we would do it before our M value reaches the point that we set our GF low? I would assume 50%, since that's what we mentioned.
More importantly, we do it at the end of the dive. That's kind of what I'm looking for here.
Gotcha.
Decompression stops happen when we go in, when we're ready to end our dive. We go into our decompression phase, and that's when we start doing our decompression stops. And so it's always done at the end of a dive to make sure. No wonder we're at 82 degrees in here. I'm sweating like a Cub Scout at a room full of Catholic priests, man. Kick that air conditioner back on. All right. So we do it at the end of the stop. And so decompression stop is the procedure that always takes place at the end of the dive. And this is the time we spend at given depths to reduce the amount of nitrogen or helium remaining in the tissues before we can rise to the surface. So the decompression stops differ according to each dive profile, depending upon the maximum depth and time of that dive. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's a complete variable number as we go through this process. And so the way we do figure out what our decompression stops are going to be two ways. The first one is plan our dive our plan. So the two pieces of software I use Multi-Deco. I find it to be the most efficient of the quick. You can't see my phone. Great. Of the quick softwares on your phone. I believe the lifetime membership for Multi-Deco is $49. Worth every nickel. It's got a lot of cool tools. I use it, I don't know, 3-4 times a week. The other one, if you have a desktop computer and you'd like to plan this on your desktop, I use Subsurface as my desktop planning software. Here's the great news about Subsurface. It is open source and free. Its mobile app does not do dive planning, though. So that is the downside of it. So it is a wonderful piece of software that will help you build your dive. And we're going to get into some dive planning with that in a little bit as we go through this process. Yep, we got about another 30 to 40 minutes on this. So we might get into dive planning tonight. So the decompression portion, we plan out at the beginning portion. The good news is we plan this. Anybody go through an open water class where you actually had to do dive tables?
Yes,
I did.
long time ago.
Yay. Okay, so here's the fun part about dive tables. All dive tables are based upon a box profile. It says, I'm going to descend to 100 feet. I'm going to stay at exactly 100 feet for 15 minutes, and I'm going to rise in the water column directly from there. That's what a dive table does, right? I write, and then it's a box profile. Same thing with your dive plan. It's going to be the safest plan you're going to have, period, end of statement, bar none, boom, as you plan this out. So you're going to plan your dive out based upon your dive planning software, but it starts giving you a couple key pieces of information. So the first one is what's my deco profile going to look like? As I build this up, what's the best decompression gas I can use? Even more importantly, do I have enough gas to do this dive safely? Dive planning will allow you to do that and say, okay, what's the dive going to look like? What's my goals? I can put those in. I can start figuring out all the key pieces of this. I can start putting an idea of how much stress do I want to put on my body based upon my deco. What's the density of the dive? What's the best gas? I can start putting all that basic idea ahead of time into a dive plan. And then I can write that wonderful dive plan on my slate, and I can start following that plan. So that's how I figure out what my dive plan is. So once I have my dive plan, I can say, okay, my dive plan consists of, I'm going to go to 150 feet for 30 minutes, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And then my first deco stop is going to be 70 feet. And I'm going to leave the bottom at 30 minutes. and it's going to take me 2 minutes to get to 70 feet. And at 70 feet, I'm going to stop. I'm going to switch my deco gas, and I'm going to go ahead and stay there for another 2 minutes before I rise to 60 feet. And I stay there for 2 minutes. And then I'm going to rise to 40 feet. Now, the idea of this is we're saying now our ceiling, the highest portion we can come in the dive at that particular portion of the dive is 70 feet. That is our ceiling. So it's important at this point, if we realize that our ceiling, everything above 70 feet, bad, everything below 70 feet is where we need to be. We need to stay at 70 feet. That's our ceiling. This is where that hang comes in. Our goal is to go up to this stop, 70 feet, and stay at that level. Not 60 feet, not 80 feet. If our first gas is 50%, and we know that our maximum operating depth for 50% is 70 feet, that means we get to that point, we're not going to descend anymore. We're not going to ascend anymore. Our ceiling, we can't go above this, and the maximum operating depth of our gas is 70 feet. So if we go down to 80 feet, we're blowing the maximum operating depth, and we're now at 1.8 on our partial pressure of oxygen. That's not good. So we got to be able to hold and hang on that ceiling, right, for a period of time. And I can tell you the secret to holding a good ceiling is good trim and buoyancy. Our overall goal is to get to that point, trim out, and our feet go from doing this to doing this. Our goal is to not kick. We need to be in balance. And we're going to find that out. So just so you guys have a little bit of set expectation, dives 1 and 2, we're going to do to 75 feet. My goal on each set of dives is to prove that you're not going to kill yourself or me, that you're able to handle basic skills on this. So dives 1 and 2, 70 feet, I'm going to see you guys hang, and you're going to hold hangs for long periods of time. I need to prove that you can hold this, hold an SMB, and do basic gas switches at a specific depth. And then we're going to move up to a depth. And then we're going to move up to depth. And then we're going to move up to depth. And we're going to hold these depths because we're going to say our ceiling is either 70 feet, 60 feet, 50 feet, and that's our maximum ceiling. And we're not going to go below that. Once we get to that depth, we're going to stay at that depth. We're going to hang. So that's what our ceiling is. That's how we do a deco stop. If we get to that point, and we hang and stay there. So how is a good decompression stop done? It's a great question, Tim. Thank you for asking. Just kidding. The ideal way is that a good safety stop and a deco stop is in diver position, horizontal. And you want to relax and hold that as much as possible. Remember earlier we talked about that wonderful guy, Henry, and his law? Well, the goal is we want to do as little motion and as little effort as humanly possible. Our goal is to relax. And you guys will get, as you get to know me, you'll realize I do this thing. Zen. And I'll give you the little Zen symbol. When you get into the Zen, I'm asking you to do 3 things. The first one is I want you to get your mind right. Realize it's all good. We're here. Everything on the surface, whatever is going on in the world, whatever our wife yelled at us, we can't do anything about that right now. Taxes, government, Iran, Iraq, whatever we're worried about underwater, it's all gone. We're worried about watching the remoras come on and make sure that they don't give a good suck onto our stomach. I've had that happen. So that's the biggest thing we're worried about. We're worried about to make sure that the sharks coming by keep that a good 3 or 4 foot distance from us. That's the kind of things we look at and worry about. And honestly, that's a pretty low on the worry scale, right? But we stay in that good horizontal position and we get our mind right. The second thing we do is make sure our breathing's right. Relax. The good yoga, relaxed breathing. We're just relaxed and chill. The last one we're going to do is get our body right. We're going to relax our muscles, shake it out, relax. No more kicking. We're just floating at this point. We're hanging at a dive position comfortably, doing nothing. Our goal is to be the jellyfish. Jellyfish have amazing trim, by the way. If you've never watched a jellyfish in the water, they kick ass. Very little motion, very little effort, and they stay just right. That's what you want to be. You want to be just the jellyfish, just chilling, right? So by staying in this nice horizontal position, relaxed, we're allowing our body to off gas completely, all at the same level. We're breathing slowly, deeply, not holding our breath, allowing the blood to circulate, and allowing our tissue compartments to off gas and that nitrogen to come out of tissue compartment, into solution, into the alveolar, breathe out the nitrogen. Out with the bad air, in with the good air, right? Things we want to avoid during our safe our deco stops is things like hyperventilation, holding our breath, heavy movement, anything like that, we already know the number one rule of diving is never hold your breath, right? Those are the things we want to do on a deco stop. Just relax. I like to think, did I leave the oven on? Should I get a puppy? Is my wife mad at me today or not? I think she's happy with me. So, just go into your Zen place and your happy place and figure that out. So, and make sure we're staying comfortably and at our ceiling or less. So good notes about deco stops. Light exercise before the dive. We talked about that. Reduces DCS stress and helps you quite a bit. Other things to be aware, you can deco in motion. It's not the best idea, right? Once we get into deco, we want to make sure we're relaxed. The other thing to be aware about is as we do these dives, we also want to make sure we're staying warm as well. One of the things you will find is as we get deeper, it does get colder. It's amazing as you get in. It's one of the reasons that as you do get into these deeper decos and deeper dives, a dry suit's not a bad idea. One of the things you're going to realize is that hypothermia is cumulative. Once you start getting cold, you're going to continue to get cold and get cold and cold. And something happens that's magical in hypothermia is we get two things that happen. We get vaginal constriction. That means your veins actually constrict, making that garden hose smaller, allowing less of that blood flow, allowing less gas flow to come through. But we also get something called blood shunting as well. The brain goes into cold mode and says, okay, bad stuff's happening. The veins are getting narrower. I can only ship blood to my heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys. That's it. That's all. The rest of y'all are screwed. This is all that's getting blood today. So less blood flow is going out, and less blood flow is able to flow because of vaginal constriction. So we got two bad things happening all at the same time, and that's going to reduce your body's ability to off gas considerably. So cold, you off gas a lot slower. Hypothermia even slower. So staying warm during your dive is absolutely imperative through this, especially since we've taken that safety margin, we've narrowed it down, right? And the problem is as wonderful as all these cool computers. In fact, Shearwater just announced they're releasing the Perdix 3. Cool. Now we all get to go buy new computers. Yay. And it's $100 more than the Perdix 2. But it still doesn't take into account the temperature of the water or my respiration rate or the effort of my dive. None of that taken into consideration at all. There is some experiments in Europe going on with that right now, but it's still not mainstream. So be aware, staying warm during your deco stop, huge. Your overall goal, here's a fun slide. Yes, I use slides to keep me in track so I don't go too far off of stray. This is one of the exercises I love having my students do. If we're working in the pool, I will literally give them a Rubik's Cube and say, okay, for the next 5 minutes in the pool, I want you to do the Rubik's Cube. No heavy effort, not getting cold. Just relax. This is what you should look like. I was dialing in a new BC and 4 aluminum tanks for a big deco dive that I was getting ready to do. They were still a little off, but that's how you should look. It should be nice, relaxed, chilled, nothing more, no effort if you can help it at all. So other pro tips, always make sure I wear the correct wetsuit protection. You're going to wear a dry suit. Moisture wicking base layers are huge. One of the most common things I see is people get really hot before a dive. And they start sweating in their dry suit, and then they get in the water. And I can promise you that little bit of moisture that you sweat out, you will pay dearly for, because you will get colder a lot more easily. Other things to avoid as well, dehydration. Make sure you're well hydrated. Eat a meal before you dive, at least an hour before. Maybe not Filiberto's giant greasy chorizo burrito. That may not be the best idea, but a nice healthy protein meal. Set up if you're in colder weather, make sure you set up your gear in advance. Don't get overheated before you get to the dive. Don't as well. So making sure to prepare yourself accordingly is definitely key. So one of the things I like to talk about at this as well, and I love this chart. This is from SDI. one of the things we like to talk about is the idea of these silent bubbles. One of the things you might notice is this safety margin. There's a distance between it. There's not a hard line. Again, Tim, Peyton, Randy, and Victoria. Randy cubed here. The way we all process nitrogen is different. So it's a big gray area. What I can tell you is pretty simple, is that more deco equals less risk. Less deco equals more risk. There's a not a fine line between them. It's a different, and it's a moving number every single day, right? As we go through this process. And silent bubbles become symptomatic bubbles really easily. What I'd like you guys to get from this chart is pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. Dive tables and safety stops are how we manage the size of the bubbles in our bloodstream. Safety stops and deco stops reduce the size of those bubbles, and there's no clear line between good and evil. Every diver is different in the way their body manages the bubble size and reductions. Simple enough. Do a freaking safety stop. I love this chart as my second slide in here. I lovingly call this a tale of 3 divers, but it's not. It's a tale of 100 divers done with Netto. They all did the same dive, 120 feet for 25 minutes, diving Nitrox. Dive group number 1 did a direct descent to the surface with no safety stop. At the 16-minute mark after getting out of the water, they had about 119,000 bubbles per cubic liter. Over the next 2 hours, it reduced absolutely. By the time they got to the 2-hour mark, they had 19,000 bubbles per cubic liter. And in case you don't realize, that's a shit ton of bubbles. Dive group number 2 did a 2-minute safety stop at 10 feet. At the 15-minute mark, they moved up to 19,000 bubbles per cubic liter, but at the end of 2 hours, they were down to 6,000 bubbles per cubic liter. Dive group number 3 did a 5-minute safety stop. At the 15-minute mark, they were down to about 6,000 bubbles per cubic liter, and at the 44-minute mark, they had no measurable nitrogen. It's not a huge amount of time, guys. It's really not. 2 minutes versus 5 minutes to get that much reduction. I'd like you to take away from this chart a couple simple things. A safety stop reduces bubbles. A longer safety stop reduces more bubbles than a short one. And a 5-minute safety stop during a repetitive dive increases your safety margin considerably. Do a safety stop. Which brings us to an excellent question. We're doing all these deco stops. Say we have 20 minutes of deco. At the end of 20 minutes of your deco, do you still do a safety stop? Peyton, what's your vote?
The question was, at the end of a 20-minute safety stop, do you do another
deco stop? Sorry.
Say again. I'm sorry.
At the end of a 20-minute deco stop, do you still do a 3 to 5 minute safety stop?
Was the 20-minute one what you planned for based on your dive plan?
Yep. It was, you had to do. You had a required obligation of 20 minutes of deco. You did all your 20 minutes of deco. So at the end of this 20 minutes, do you add a 3 to 5 minute safety stop?
It can't hurt if that's what you're looking for. You're not going to be worse off by doing it.
I like that. Can't hurt. Tim, do you do a safety stop?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Randy L?
Yep.
Randy Beckman?
Yep.
Cal Worthington? Tex?
Yes, absolutely. It was drilled in my head from years ago.
Absolutely. Always do a safety stop. It doesn't hurt. It's going to reduce your obligation just that much more as well. So there's another part of the decompression that I'm going to encourage you guys to do, and it's called the body deco. The last part, after you finish your 3 to 5 minute safety stop, I like to pop my head out of the water and spend about 5 to 10 minutes additional in the water, allowing gas under pressure to come out of my body at a nice, slow, comfortable rate. One of the things I have realized all too much over the years is twin sets on my back are freaking heavy. Twin sets on my back plus a deco bottle is even heavier. And I have yet to be on a boat with an elevator. So I am waiting for that day. But
is that the next purchase?
Yeah, hopefully. I can tell you that my twin 117s with 2 deco bottles and regs weighs 150 pounds. I weighed it. I was curious. I don't always dive 117s. That's all my bigger dives. I usually dive twin 100s. But 150 pounds is a lot of pressure to climb up on a ladder onto a boat and make a step and get to your seat. It's a lot of stress on your body. Your heart's going to kick in. And we remember from our discussion of Henry, you didn't realize how important Henry was to you and how much it affected you till now, right? All of a sudden, my heart's beating like this. I'm off gassing like a mad dog. So take that time, relax, stick your head out of the water, lean back, enjoy the waves, leave your regulator in your mouth, especially if it's your deco reg. Leave that deco reg in your mouth. If you're breathing an 80% deco mix on the surface, even better. You're off gassing just that much faster. Leave your reg in your mouth. You're just that much safer. Safety is always paramount. So do a body deco. Allow yourself 5 to 10 minutes in the water, just floating before you get out. It helps. So what if? Let's talk about some what ifs. What happens if you miss a deco stop? I was supposed to stop at 70, and all of a sudden I find myself at 60 feet. What do I do?
When did you notice it?
Oh, pretty immediate. I knew I was supposed to be at 70 feet. I had, and I've been there for 2 or 3 seconds.
Okay, you go back down.
Absolutely. If you ascend less than 10 feet above the decompression stop and you can return in less than a minute, return to the depth of the missed deco stop and complete the scheduled time and remain 1 minute longer. Easy enough? Simple rules, right? Now, here's the magic thing. What happens if I get to 60 feet, but I was supposed to be at 70 feet, and I'm there for more than a minute? What do I do? Peyton, what do you think? What do I do?
Yeah, I did the E one, and I can't remember the whole formula, but I think it had to do with there was 15 minutes in there going back down, but I don't remember exactly. I'm sorry.
No worries, it's all good. That's what I'm here for. So here's the easy. So you remain at that new. So if I was supposed to stop at 70, I got stuck at 60 for whatever reason. I was trying to deploy my SMB because I didn't do it at the bottom, and I discovered, oh crap, I should have been at 70 this whole time, and I'm at 60. I'm going to remain at the 60 foot for the entire rest of the run time of that dive, of that portion of my time. So if I was supposed to be at the 60 foot until a run time of 40 minutes, and it's 29 minutes, I'm going to stay there till it's time to leave that point. Now, here's the catch. It's at the end of the dive on my last deco. For every minute missed at depth of deco, you want to add time to your last deco stop and extend your safety stop by 3 minutes to 5 minutes. So if I missed my 70 foot to 60 foot by 1 minute, I'm going to add an extra minute to my last deco stop. And I'm going to extend my safety stop by 3 to 5 minutes. If I miss it by 5 minutes, I'm going to add 5 minutes to my final deco stop. Make sense? Now, that's straight from the materials. Now, the good news is your computer will do a lot of this math for you. In planning these dives, you're going to plan out this. I'm going to dive at 150 feet for 30 minutes. I'm going to, my first deco stop is going to be 70 feet for 3 minutes, 60 feet for 2 minutes. It's going to give you this plan. But how many of you have made a dive plan that said, I was going to dive to, like Lady Luck is a great example. I was going to dive, maximum depth of Lady Luck is 137 feet. And I wanted to see the sand because there's some cool nudie branches right there. And there's some really cool bristleworms that live at the 137 feet. On that dive, I may plan out for 25 minutes at 137 feet, but how much time do I actually spend at 137 feet? Probably not all of it, right? Any of you ever plan a max depth dive and not spend most of your time at that max depth? All of you?
No.
It happens, right? It is what it is. So as you go through this process, realize that you're going to plan for worst case scenario with your slated process. In reality, as we start talking about the difference between talking about this in the book work and planning this and actually doing it, you have the plan. You could absolutely follow the plan and you'll be amazingly safe. If your dive computer died and all you had was a timing device, you could absolutely work from that plan perfectly. But our new modern computers will plan and they will calculate amount of gas actually used, or not amount of gas, I'm sorry, amount of nitrogen absorbed at that depth, at the shallower depths, and they'll give you credit for time not spent at the maximum depth. So at the very worst, if you follow your computer, you're still going to be okay, provided you've taken into account a few basic ideas of safety for your plan and how you feel during the dive. And if you start noticing anything that's outside of the norm, make sense? All right, guys, let's do a quick round robin. We're coming up on that time for this evening. We're going to pick up on gas density and dive planning tomorrow. But I would like to know 2 things that you learned tonight that you may or may not have known, and 1 thing that I need to clarify for you this evening before we leave. Randy, text?
The gradient factors, I need to understand them better, and temperature. Huge.
Okay, what do you need to understand better? What do I need to clarify for you tonight?
Well, you clarified a lot. I just need to learn it. I need to do dive computer.
Okay. Randy Beckman? 2 things I need to clarify.
What you need to clarify? It wasn't anything. You kind of touched on it, but in the e-learning. So in the e-learning, it talked about travel gas, and then we were talking about gas switches. And so my question is, once you do your gas switch to your deco gas, do you stick with that right up until your next deco, or do you go back to your back gas for travel gas?
Negative. Travel gas is when you're getting into a hypoxic mix of oxygen. That's when you start getting in. So, for example, if I'm doing a 300-foot dive and maybe I'm diving a blend of 1070, that's a blend I like. So that means I'm breathing 10% oxygen. Can I breathe 10% oxygen at the surface?
No.
Absolutely not. So what I'll do is I'll dive with what's called a travel gas, and usually that'll be like a 21%, and that'll get me down to 140 feet. Now, 140 feet or 130 feet on that travel gas, I can now switch to my back gas because now I'm at 6 atmosphere, and now 6 times 10% oxygen tank now equals 60%. Now I can breathe my back gas.
Okay.
Travel gas is when I have a back gas that is unsuitable for surface use.
All right. So in our current where we're learning now,
You will be using a
our
travel gas.
back gas, and then we'll say at 70 feet we'll go to 50%, and
Correct.
we just stay with 50% the rest of the time.
Correct.
Is that how I understand? Okay. So that was the main thing I need clarification on. I was a little confused on that.
I didn't realize they talked about travel gas in ANDP, but I'll have to go back and look at that. The TDI did pop one on me about a month ago. It was hilarious. They redid all their books for Trimix, and because I'm good friends with them and they're so close, they called over and says, "Hey, we're getting ready to release our new Trimix course. We put it in your profile. We'd like you to go through and take the final exam on that." Okay. And they said, we want you to read the materials and then take the final exam. And I'm like, okay. So I got annoying on this. It was just kind of fun. So what I did is I didn't read any of the materials. I went to all the exams and just did just the exams. I ended up missing 1 question on the final exam. So I was pretty proud of that, but it was pretty funny that I finally got to go through it. So I've taken the Trimix course on e-learning twice now, once for myself, once as instructor, and now with a new class. But it was just kind of funny that to go through and I would love to tell you that I've read the whole book recently, but I have not. I try and teach what's current and what's applicable for you. So that's kind of the annoying story with me. So Vic, what's something you don't understand that I need to clarify?
For me, it was just that last little bit, because I know it was in the e-learning. But just the numbers again on how much time you would add if you've surpassed per minute.
Oh, gotcha.
Just the actual numbers for it.
Absolutely. That's simple enough. So as we go through this, so if you miss your stop by 10 feet, but less than a minute, maybe this will easier. You want to take a screenshot?
Yeah.
There you go. I'm making it even easier, so you can just take it with you. But yeah, less than 10 feet for less than a minute. Return back to the original depth and stay 1 minute longer. If more than a minute and 10 feet, stay at the new stop till the end of that run time. Everybody get that?
Yep.
Cool. And at the end of this, you guys are welcome to my presentation as well. I'm happy to save it down as a PDF or as a PowerPoint, and you're welcome to it. I've added a lot to it, and I've got a pretty significantly large deck that I work from to make sure I don't miss anything. I feel like this is a very important course, and I want to make sure I get all the detail that you guys deserve. There are a few portions that I'll kind of move past fairly quickly. I feel like you guys have it, but I've got them in there in case I get into a class where I'm like, I see that we might have some challenges. So some of the stuff I've skipped past because I feel like you guys got it. So there we go. All right. Let's see. Peyton, what's something I need to clarify for you?
I was going to say the same thing Victoria did, so thank you for throwing that up there. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Perfect. What's something you learned, Peyton?
I think just the concept that it's about managing nitrogen. I think that is at least a good way for me to think about it. And then if you can understand the expected nitrogen that you're going to have and work to just off gas that safely, conservatively, I think that's a good concept for me.
Absolutely. I like to think of it, decompression as an obligation. And you may have heard that term before. It's an obligation. So I think of it like my house payment is my obligation. If I don't pay my house payment, bad things happen. I get kicked out of my house. I get to be homeless, all kinds of cool stuff. If I don't pay the decompression obligation, bad things happen, right? And so your decompression it's not compulsory. It's an obligation. And just like everything else, I would assume that all of us are attuned with paying our bills on time and all the benefits that go along with doing that as well. And are pretty aware of other people in the world or the community that have decided to forego those obligations and have seen the results of what those bad decisions make. Decompression is the same thing. It's an obligation. It's your choice. You can certainly skip it, but I can promise you, when you don't pay attention to your obligations, bad stuff happens. So that's how I always envision it in my mind. Is it's an obligation that I'm absolutely willing to pay every single time. Let's see, Randy L. Did I get you yet?
Not yet.
Okay, cool.
My question is pretty quick and simple. If our last decompression stop is going to be at 20 feet, does that mean our safety stop's at 10?
Nope. We do our safety stop at 10 feet as well. Here in Florida and most places in the ocean, I strongly encourage you, once you are done, you go to the surface. But staying at 10 feet, you're in that prop zone. And as I said before, man versus prop, prop usually wins.
So is the safety stop just adding on to the 20 feet?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So you just to the 20-foot decompression obligation.
Right.
Just stay for an extra 3 to 5 minutes at that extra step. You're still off gassing, regardless. Now, if you're doing shore dives, you can absolutely do a 15-foot safety stop on a shore dive. If you're doing altitude, high altitude, you might think about a 10-foot safety stop instead of a 20 because of the way altitude diving works. But in this particular case, in where we're diving and what we're doing, all our safety stops and final decos will be 20 feet. Let's see. Who did I miss? I missed somebody. I got Randy, got Peyton. Oh, there we go. Tim.
You missed me.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Everybody covered the notes that I had. My thoughts were in the same vein as the missing the deco stop math, but I also have a note here to check out the multi-deco app, which I will Google later. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. It's there's two of them. There's multi-deco and I'm blanking on the other one.
Subsurface.
Subsurface is the one for your desktop, but it doesn't work as a mobile app.
V Planner is the one I asked you about.
Yeah, V Planner. There we go. I was having a brain aneurysm there for a minute. Yeah, V Planner's not bad. I have nothing against it. I like multi-deco better. I've investigated both, and multi-deco fit my needs better and was simpler to use. I liked it. It had a great gas blender on it as well, which is pretty awesome.
Some of the reading I did on the V Planner, it doesn't use the algorithm that Shearwater uses. Is that correct?
No, that's not true. They all use Buhlmann.
Okay, it looked like that V planner was on VGM. Is that right?
No,
remembering that right?
I believe it's got options for both, but my understanding was, and it's been probably 4 years since I've even touched V planner, but it had the option of VPM, RGB, and Buhlmann, if I remember correctly. Last time I saw it, that's my recollection. But again, it's been about 4 years since I've even touched it. So my understanding, though, it was using Buhlmann. It had an option of using Buhlmann, and you'll also notice that in subsurface that you do have the option of RGB as well as Buhlmann. I encourage you to use Buhlmann. Perfect. Did I miss anybody else? Victoria, did I get you? Did I pick on you yet?
Yeah, you did.
Okay, good. Getting old. Oh, get my cane out. Well, perfect, guys. We went through a lot tonight. In preparation for tomorrow, we're going to start with gas density. If you go to Stuart Scuba, on the right-hand side of the top thing, there's a thing that says blogs. If you want to get a jump on this, there is a blog about gas density. It's that's the easiest way to find it. You can also find it on Dan's website as well. I've written for Dan under my own name and under pseudonyms numerous times. And there's a great article that's been well vetted on that give you a nice jump start on gas density. It is a hot button for me, I will tell you, and we'll be going through gas density. So I do have a lot of blogs on Stuart Scuba on the blog page, so you're welcome to dig through any of them. And I've got some pretty awesome recipes as well there. So if you like to cook fish, I like to cook fish. I've got some great fish recipes on there as well. So I enjoy cooking fish quite a bit. So they are yummy and tasty. I am a member of PETA, People for Eating Tasty Animals. So perfect. If you guys have any other questions, concerns before then, or you need something clarified, feel free to email me, text me, or call me. You should all have my cell phone. If you don't, I can give it to you now. It's always available, and I always try to make myself available to make sure you guys are taken care of. Safety is my paramount concern. I do have a schedule for diving. Let's see. We did miss 2 students today, but that's okay. Let's see. Tim and Peyton, I've got you guys scheduled for the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. The 24th dive, just be aware, is going to be at 1 p.m. We're going to meet at 12 p.m. on that day at the same place we'll have met for the 22nd and the 23rd. We need to be at the boat docks at 7 a.m. On those days for the dives at the Riviera Beach Marina. You should have gotten an email with that address and everything on that. But on the
I don't have any emails from me. If you could just resend.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
I'll just put together a schedule into one simple email instead of sending you a copy of all those emails.
Thank you.
Which office are you going to be in on Thursday?
I'll be here in the shop.
On Thursday?
Yeah.
All right.
2, 8. So that's what I've got scheduled for us. So I'm going to do Tim and Peyton together. Let's see, on the 22nd, 23rd, 24th. Hopefully we're going to be able to meet on the 21st as well for a gear review to make sure. I mean, we can do it on the dock. I'd really prefer if we could do it the night before on the 21st, if that's possible. If it's not, I understand. Randy, Randy LeBoy and Randy Beckman. I'd like to do your guys' together and put you guys as a dive team on the 15th, 16th, and 19th, if that would work.
That works for me.
Perfect. And let's see. So that puts it together as well. Randy Tex.
Yes.
I'm going to put a schedule with you. I'd like to spend a little bit more time with you in predecessor of this as well.
Okay.
If something happens, I do have a couple of students that I'll be working with on the 5th, 6th, and 7th as well. I've got 2 gentlemen on those days that I'll be teaching as well. That'll be doing dives. Our dive schedule is going to look like this. Day 1 of our dives will be 70 feet or less. Our skills are going to be, you get to remove your mask and put it back on twice. I do most skills twice because I need to prove that the first time was not an accident. We will go through broken mask, which means you'll have to take your mask off. You're fine to put it on your arm, pull out your spare mask, put it on. When we get done with the drill, you're welcome to put your primary mask back on. I know me, I have a backup mask that is fine. I still don't like it because I've got my primary mask broken in just the way I like it. So I get it. If you want to return to your primary mask, you're welcome to. At some point, I'm going to ask you to cut something. So I need you to be able to pull at least one knife off. And then the second time, I'd like you to pull a second knife off and cut something. Usually we'll find fishing line and I'll have you cut that. I'd like to see you do that in a fairly timely fashion. Ability to pull a knife and save your life can be pretty paramount. We're also going to go through a varied version of S drills. What I'll do is I will point to you, and whatever hand I point to you, if it's on the right side, I'll go bang. I don't know if you can see me, bang, right? And what that means is your left tank, if I use my right hand, has exploded. You'll need to reach back, find your isolator, isolate that off, reach back, find that valve, and turn it off. Here's the key. If you can't breathe out of the regulator you're breathing currently, that means you just turn that tank off. Go to the other regulator. The way to do that is going to reach down, you're going to find it, you're going to test it once to make sure that it actually works. See some bubbles, and then you're going to switch. Good to go. And let me know the drill is done. At that point, I'm going to say cut. You're going to reach back. You're going to find the isolator, turn your isolator back on, and then you're going to turn your tank back on. And then luckily for you guys, we'll do the same thing with the other side. Bang. Your now right tank has just exploded. You'll reach back. You're going to find the isolator. You're going to isolate it off. You're going to find that valve. You're going to turn it off. And again, if you're able to breathe through the regulator, you're on the right regulator. If you can't breathe through it, it means you need to go to the other regulator. It's pretty simple stuff. The other thing you guys will find, I do a lot of classes with people who've been through other tech instructors. I'm a very relaxed, very easygoing tech instructor, very welcoming of all people. I am not stressful. So please don't get stressed with any of this. My goal is to make this a fun experience so that you want to continue doing it. I have dealt with students. I dealt with one on Friday that I literally wanted to ask him, if your tech classes were that nasty, why would you ever want to continue diving tech? And that's not my goal here, guys. My goal is that you learn something, you learn how to be safe, you walk away with a skill, and you've had fun. So I'll point out some stuff. I'll point out a shark over there. Don't pet it, right? And have fun. Well, I'll point out some lobsters. We'll point out some cool stuff, and we'll do some drills as we go along. So I want you guys to have fun and enjoy this because I want you to want to continue doing this because you found it to be fun. Those are going to be the primary skills we're going to go through. The last skill that's a must, I have to see every single time. So I need to see you launch your SMB with that. So you're going to need to reach into your pocket, find an SMB, find your reel or your spool. You're going to need to make sure those two are connected, and you're going to need to fill that SMB and set it to the surface from depth. Now, Tim, that was a great question. I heard you think, why would you always launch your SMB from depth? Well, here's Friday when we were diving, the current was 3.5 knots. If we have 25 minutes, we'll say 30 minutes of deco ahead of us, and the current is currently going at 3.5 knots, by the time we get to the surface, how far downrange have we floated? Over 1.5 miles, right? My goal after a dive is to be picked up by the boat. I enjoy getting back on the boat and not swimming for 2 hours and hoping, or 3 hours swimming ashore. So we launch from depth because that puts a marker exactly so the captain can see it. Even if he has to swim, go away, he knows about where, and he can mark that SMB and he can get back to it if he needs to. But for the most part, he can follow that and he says, oh, my divers are right there. I can follow them. When I hit the surface, the captain's typically within 100 yards of me, and he knows exactly where I'm at. So if we launch it from depth, we have the ability to let the captain know exactly where we're at with our current plan. And especially in a current, we do everything here is drift diving. So one of the things you will definitely need is a spool or a reel with at least 1.5 times the maximum length of our deepest dive. So 200 feet is the minimum acceptable for an A&DP class. If you need a reel, I keep them in shop. I'm happy to. You can get them other places if you feel more comfortable with that. I'm not here to push a bunch of gear on you. I certainly would love to see you buy $10,000 worth of gear for me. But if you're not comfortable with that, it's all good. I'm not going to stress on it. It won't affect my burnt hamburger tonight. So as you go through that, so those are the skills I'm going to need to see on dives 1 and 2: broken mask, knife, S drill. At some point, I'm also going to ask you to remove your deco bottle, and it looks simply like deco. Give me. Right. All I'm looking for you to do is be able to take it off, bring it out in front of you, and hand it to me. We'll swim around for a little bit. I'll hand it back to you. I need to see you manipulate your tank. The other skill I'm going to need to see is to prove to me what gas you have when we get to the deco switch. We come up to 70 feet, deco switch. What you're going to need to do is you're going to need to pull the bottom clip off your tank, put it in front of you. You need to look at it. Your mod is 70 feet. Check your depth. I'm at 70 feet. You're going to need to look at me, and I'm going to tell you you're okay for deco switch. What I've done is I've looked at your mod, I've looked at your depth, and I've said, oh, you're at an appropriate depth that you can breathe that gas. So you've looked at it and checked it. You've had me look at it and checked it. So we've double checked to make sure you're on the right gas. You're going to reach back, clip it, turn it on, pull that regulator out, clear it and breathe it, change your computer over to the appropriate gas. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Make sense? We're going to check it. You're going to check it. We're going to switch our computers and we're going to breathe it. Easy peasy. So those are the skills I have to see. And the good news is I'm going to see the exact same skills on dive 1 as I see on dive 2. Dive 3 and 4 are going to be the next day, and they're going to be a depth of 100 to 110 feet. And guess what? We're going to do the exact same skills, and hopefully we'll see some sharks. I like seeing sharks. They're my favorite animal, right? We've had a really nice contingent of hammerheads and whites coming through lately. So hopefully you guys are all lucky and can see a white shark or a hammerhead. They're definitely special. And I'm going to see those same skills. Here's where it gets fun. Dive 5 is what I consider your graduation dive. We're going to plan out our biggest dive. Our goal is going to be 130 to 150 feet. And our goal time is going to be 70 minutes of run time. That's going to be our overall goal. We're going to go down. We're going to do similar skills. They'll be a little bit easier, a little bit, if you've done a good job on dives 1 through 4, they're going to be less, but they're going to be more surprise, and there'll be more drills and skills at that point. But we're going to work on, we're going to hold our stops. We're going to check our gas, come to the surface. If you do that one well, fantastic. Dive number 6 is just a play dive. All I'm going to do is rearrange the tinsel on the tree to make sure you get all the fun little detail pieces that we may not have covered, or we should have covered, we could have covered, to make you just that much better of a diver. So dive number 6 is just a polished dive for me, unless something happened and we just laid an egg on dive number 5. We laid an egg on dive number 5. Good news. We have another dive, contingent dive, that we can do our graduation dive on. But I would rather graduate you on dive 5 than dive 6. It gives us a little bit of room for error, and it also gives me opportunity to help you polish and become the best diver that I could possibly send you off and be. Make sense? At the end of this, once you guys graduate with all these skills, I want you to understand that at no point did you guys pay for a certification. You paid for knowledge, right? I don't certify anybody. All I do is I provide a tremendous amount of knowledge, hopefully skill and ability. At the end of it, if you accomplish all the skills and pass all the tests to the level of the agency, I will submit your paperwork to the agency with my verification that you have passed those, and the agency will issue a couple of really awesome little cards with your picture on it, saying that you were an advanced Nitrox diver and a Helitrox diver. So I don't issue certifications, the agency does. So I just want to be really clear. I promise knowledge, not certification. So if something happens and we don't make it through, it's not the end of the world. I have plenty of divers that come out to do trimix with me from all over the place. I had one this week that I absolutely told him, I says, I am not ready to go past 100 feet with you. I'm sorry. I don't feel safe for you, and I don't feel safe for me going past 100 feet. I know this may not be what you wanted, but please come back out. Let's dive more, and let's get those skills built in and up to that point, and we'll get there. We'll absolutely get there. We may not do it on the number of dives that are required for this, but we can get there. So just be aware that is a possibility. It doesn't happen in ANTB very often, but it does happen. So I like to set expectations so that we're really clear. Everybody cool? Awesome. Well, guys, I will see you guys tomorrow night at 6:30. If you have any questions, concerns, email me, text me, call me. Don't do it in the middle of the night because you're in Germany and you think it's cool to email me or call me at 6 a.m. your time, because it's a very different time my time, I'm sure. So just kidding. Call me anytime. If I don't answer, I will call back.
Thank you.
Guys, have a great evening. If you need anything from me, let me know.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Night. See you later.